Chapter 427, Black Leech Defense Line, Is This Route Really Safe? Nian Lu muttered. His hands were not affected by what he said, fingernail-sized white lotuses were rising and falling. Nian Lu's personality was lively and his cultivation method was also different than other people. Lei Peng lovingly caressed the gold crystal broadsword with an intoxicated look. Ma Fan chewed a stalk of green grass, his head pillowed on his arms as he looked at the sky. The sky inside the ship was just an illusory formation, but it was so lifelike it caused people to feel their minds relax. The sky of the Seal Extinction battlefield seemed to be dyed with blood, so pressuring it robbed people of hope. No one had to see that. We'll only know if we go through, Ma Fan said lazily. It's better if it's not safe. Lei Peng rumbled. In the days after waking up, he had seemed to be a completely different person, silent and stoic. When he had gotten the gold crystal broadsword, he finally became normal again, and even more battle-thirsty than before. His eyes flashed with the desire to battle, his large hands continuously caressing the broadsword. Anyone that accidentally saw this scene felt coldness rise up. Ding ding ding. Sharp and shrill sounds of the alarm suddenly sounded. Yu Crow's mouth. 1. Ma Fan's sword. Before his words landed, he jumped up from the ground and turned to a dash of sword light. Lei Peng and Nian Lu did not dare to slack off. Their figures both turned to sword lights and disappeared. Inside the black turtle, sword lights flashed across the sky. These are, Mo. Mo didn't dare to be certain. The images from the mirage formations on the outside of the ship and passed back into the inside, but the strange people in the images were unfamiliar to everyone. Yes. Gong Sun Cha's expression was serious. Other than the Mo which looked strange, what he cared about more was that black river that extended behind them. That river was about 10 zhang wide, the water was inky black. It was like an enormous earthworm that seemed to curve its body slowly. Gong Sun Cha recognized this black river. In war chess, he frequently had to meet it. That wasn't a river, it was a defensive line. What was flowing slowly inside it was not some kind of black water, but something called black leeches. Black leech defense line, one of the most commonly used defensive lines of the Mo. He had tripped up over this many times. Mo and Lil Miss expressions were slightly bad. They had tried their best to avoid the three factions at war, and hadn't expected to encounter the Mo's defense lines. Mo instantly realized where the problem had occurred. It was the Jia map. They had chosen the route based on the Jia map that Ming Ju Zi had provided, but living in the Yao world, Ming Ju Zi only knew the details of Yao defense lines, and only knew the general shape of the Mo defense lines. This was relatively distant from the Mo rearing sea of the Mo. The Mo had pushed their defensive line so far in. Mo was shocked inside. He knew what this meant. This meant that the Mo had not encountered any pressure, which was why they were so unconstrained. However, he wasn't in the mood to worry about others. The problem right in front of them was that the Mo will think of them as enemies. The problem they had tried so hard to avoid still happened. Charge through it. All of the solutions furiously flipping through his mind once, he unhesitatingly ordered. Lil misunderstood. A black leech defense line was not enough to make him panic. The black leech defense line was just 10 zhang wide. It was very thin. He had many methods to overcome it, but right now, they only needed the simplest method. That was right, charge through it. The black turtle suddenly accelerated. They're charging over. She gaped in shock at the black ship charging towards the defense line like a moth to a flame. Lon Qin also was stunned. Even though this was just a sentry post, and the black leech line wasn't secure, but it wasn't something that a little ship like this one could deal with. This tiny ship was probably a scout boat. Scout boats mostly were used to carry scouts. Their speeds were fast and they were very nimble, but their defensive abilities were weak. The scouts inside were harder to deal with. Those that were scouts were definitely the elite. It was impossible to charge through the 10-zhang thick black leech defense line with a little boat like this. The little black boat was extremely quick. It was like a bolt of lightning which provided more evidence for what Lan Qin guessed. The moment the little black boat reached the defense line, the silent black leech defense line suddenly started to roar. Countless tiny black leeches rained down on the little black boat. The black leeches were a very ferocious insect swarm species. Their reproductive abilities were very strong. Mature leeches were about 3 cun in length, completely black, and shaped like a shuttle, with only one eye. Their territorial instincts were very strong. Any being that invaded their territory would encounter their ferocious attack. Just a charge from the black leeches could rival a full power blow from a MO captain. The attacks of a black leech defense line was endless, and counted in tens of thousands. Even true MO brigadiers did not easily dare to provoke these little beings. The nondescript little boat was instantly drowned in the flood of black leeches. Pia pia pia. A dense sting of pops sounded like rain. The entire defensive lines moved angrily. The sharp hissing unique to black leeches filled the eardrums. That wasn't right. A hint of puzzlement flashed through Lan Qin's eyes. He felt that something wasn't right. How come there's no explosion? Shi rubbed his head with dejectedness. Lan Qin's body froze, and his expression froze on his face. He finally knew what wasn't right. That little boat hadn't exploded yet. Hit by tens of thousands of black leeches at once, the most rational result was to explode into pieces instantly. But ever since the little black boat entered the defense line, the speed greatly decreased as though it went from being a bolt of lightning to a turtle. It was drowned by countless black leeches, causing it to look like a thick black leech ball. There wasn't any part of the ship showing, but the black leech ball was slowly moving forward. The movement rate was very slow, as though it was just squirming, but it really was moving forward. As thought, the black leeches were pushing it slowly forward. Crossing the 10-zhang defense line did not take up much time. When the black leech ball reached the other side of the defense line, the layers of black leeches scattered like an avalanche and revealed the black ship inside. Lan Qin's pupils suddenly constricted. The ship was still unblemished. There were no changes in shape, no marks, it looked just the same as before. He was not the only one surprised by this, the entire base was silent. All the MO soldiers had frozen expressions on their bodies. The black turtle that left the black leech defensive lines sped up. Lan Qin shook and reacted. He said urgently, "Alarm! Quick! Send the alarm!" Before he finished speaking, he saw Shi charge out. He knew it wasn't good. Gritting his teeth, he hurriedly followed. Successfully charging through the black leech defense line, cheers sounded inside the black turtle. They had all been frightened by the fierce attacks from the black leech defense line. At this time, the cheers were unusually loud. Holy, that frightened me to death. Lucky that our turtle shell is thick enough. We cannot underestimate the MO, without Lil, turtle, we may not have been able to go through. You guys are weak, GE was so calm. Can these little worms break our shell, the #1 shell in the world? Are you joking? Our Lil, turtle has been tempered in the golden crystal sand storms. Please, I saw your expression change just then, everyone excitedly discussed the recent danger. Compared to the high mood below, Zhua Mo and Lil Mist did not show any signs of relaxing. Their action just now was akin to poking the hornet's nest. Since the other had set up sentries here, then Mo army was definitely not far away. The battle had just started. I'm going to prepare. Lil Mist turned and left with a calm expression. The black turtle was strong defensively, but on the battlefield, if one just purely defended, even the strongest shield would eventually break. Zhuemo stared hard at the Jie River, his mind furiously turning. It seemed impossible to avoid a hard battle, but for them, the most important was not to win, but to quickly leave the battlefield behind and charge out of bloody sky metropolis Jia. What he was most worried about was being dragged down by the Mo army. That was a road to death. His group seemed numerous, but compared to the most important defense line of the Mo, they weren't enough to fill the gaps of the Mo's teeth. He was pondering where else the Mo had set up defenses. As for the battle, he did not need to worry at all. Lil Miss could complete everything perfectly. The cheers inside the ship gradually calmed. Everyone's expressions became stern. Lil Miss orders reached every person, prepare to battle. The black turtle raced on murderously. Zhuemo could not have imagined that the situation here was far more complex than he had thought. Just like how the Mo had pushed the defense line to this place, in reality, its surroundings were filled with scouts from all factions. These elite individuals were carefully hidden in the bloody mist like ghosts. When the black turtle broke through the bloody mist, it attracted the attention of all the scouts. When the black turtle unexpectedly charged through the black leech defense line, it caused restlessness among the hidden scouts. News passed down at a frightening speed back to the battle generals of all the factions. Bloody sky metropolis Jia, which had gradually calmed down and settled into a face-off, suddenly changed weather because of a little black ship. Bing Lan narrowed her eyes. It is a Shouja ship. Yes. Even though there are no insignias on it, but it is a talisman forged by Shouja, the vice-commander nodded and said. Why have they suddenly attacked the Mo defense line? A little ship, what can it do? Bing Lan tapped the table and said to herself. We speculate this ship has become lost, the vice-commander respectfully reminded. This ship is not ordinary, and so the people on it are not ordinary. Bing Lan thought for a moment and then said lightly, pass the news to Liang Wei. He knows what to do. You are saying it is one of our ships. The middle-aged person was authoritative. He showed a pondering expression on his face. Yes, Darren. The vice-commander was also slightly puzzled. But we did not receive any news from the brass. So it's like that, the middle-aged person was thoughtful. The vice-commander did not speak. He stood with a slight bow waiting for orders. Who is closest to there? The middle-aged person asked. The vice-commander knew that Darren had made a decision and hurried to answer, it is Ming Lai Darren. Tell him to keep a close watch. He can move according to the events, and decide for himself, the middle-aged person said. 1. Crow mouth, someone who brings bad things about by talking about them. Chapter 428, Conspiracy. I wonder how eldest Shixiang is doing right now. Ming Lei gazed at the expanse of bloody mist and said emotionally. The deep fiery red cloak he was wearing floated up in the wind and flapped. Ming Lei's posture was as straight as a sword, his two sharp brows tilted upwards into his hair, his eyes narrow and had a sharp presence. Who knows? Likely better than us. I'm really sick of this ghastly place, a round-faced youth beside Ming Lei muttered. On his back was a normal pine script sword. He looked as though he hadn't woken up from his sleep. He was Ming Lei's shitty, Song Yuan. Ming Lei's expression was slightly helpless as he said, You have no ambition, so many people want to get in and earn more merit. From the first day, you've been muttering about going back. Song Yuan snorted. Merit? One needs their little life to experience that. Ming Lei smiled. The more afraid you are on the battlefield, the easier it is for you to die. I only have one life, I won't get more if I die. Song Yuan glanced at Ming Lei. I'm different from battle maniacs like you. Yi likes peace. Ming Lei knew Song Yuan's temperament and wasn't angry. He said in puzzlement, I'm just wondering why Shitty is so nervous. In terms of the past, the Yaomao were greatly wounded in the Great War 3,000 years ago, and our Shouja's four-realm heaven is full of talents, and have reached the most prosperous moment of our recent 10,000 years. It is easy to see who is weak and strong with a glance. Recently, eldest Shixiang used a scheme and the Yao were greatly wounded. Even in this bloody sky metropolis Jia, we are not losing. What is Song Yuan Shitty worried about? Song Yuan smiled coldly. I'm just worried you guys are underestimating the heroes of the world. Ming Lei stilled and then said with a smile, Kun Luan, Shi Xian, Xian Kong, and Tian Huan, which realm isn't full of heroes? To say nothing else, just our Kun Luan has as many battle generals as the clouds, experts like rain. Are so many disciples unable to satisfy Shitty's worries? What about eldest Shixiang? Song Yuan was silent for a beat before he said, eldest Shixiang's genius is undoubted. He raised his head to look into the distance and said in a light voice, actually, not just eldest Shixiang, even you, Ming Lei Shixiang, are a top battle general. How can I not know what we are good at? But for some unknown reason, my heart beats wildly. Ming Lei showed a thoughtful expression. You know, when people like me cultivate to such a level, our sword heart is strong and not affected by outside demons, but I still feel unsafe, Song Yuan said with a sigh and spread his hands, maybe I'm just worried needlessly. Ming Lei was a detail-oriented person. He studied as a battle general, and Song Yuan cultivated the sword scripture of the sect, and had a more sensitive intuition of danger. Does Shitty feel that something is not right? Song Yuan shook his head. I do not know, which is why I feel so uncertain. Just at this time, a sword light flew from the horizon. Song Yuan beckoned with his hand and the sword light landed in his palm. He moved his hand and there was a little sword on it. Ming Lei picked up the little sword and light flashed through his eyes. Let's go, we have a mission. Liang Wei's expression was cold as he stared at the little black boat. When he had received the order, he had been roaming around this area and coincidentally seen the black turtle break through the black leech defense line. But he hadn't expected that the black turtle would so easily go through the black leech defense line. As a silver battle general, of course he knew how powerful this black leech defense line was. The grade of this nondescript little black ship was far greater than he had predicted, if it was able to easily go through the defense line. Even the stupidest person knew now that the identities of the Xiuzha inside the little ship were definitely not ordinary. Maybe the people inside were major. Liang Wei unconsciously licked his lips, the fire of battle thirst flickering in his eyes. The scar on his handsome face was abnormally sinister. He forcibly suppressed the battle intent burning inside. Yao and Mo were allies, but the other definitely would not let them enter the defense line easily. Receiving permission to enter the defense line was only possible under one situation, when they were unable to hold it. This little ship was definitely not simple, and its defensive capabilities would not be so weak. Liang Wei was like a lone wolf in the wilderness that was silently waiting for an opportunity. The breakthrough of the black turtle past the black leech defense line was like pouring a bucket of cold water into a pot of boiling oil. The situation instantly exploded. 3 groups of Mo soldiers came from 3 different directions like 3 floods. With the strange corpse gone, the pressure Pu Yao felt greatly decreased. He became lively again, and resumed acting as though he was the leader. Battle generals are different. Xiuzha battle generals emphasize deduction, while Yao battle generals emphasize consciousness, both emphasizing control of the troops. But Mo battle generals? They emphasize bravery. Emphasize bravery? Sui Mo was slightly shocked. It had to be said that individual bravery was not so important in large-scale battle. If one Jindan Xiuzha encountered 1 or 2 dozen Ningmai, then it was a secure victory. If a Jindan encountered a well-trained troop of 50, then that was a very dangerous situation. If they encountered 100 well-trained Ningmai, then they had to run. Jindan were high-level soldier types among the military, but they were cannon fodder used to wear down high-level soldiers. This was an ancient tactic that was still very effective. So in the military, each Jindan would also have the protection of an entire troop of Ningmai. So the effects of personal bravery were not evident in large-scale battles. You'll know when you see it. At this important time, Pu Yao kept a secret again. Zhuo was so angry he almost swore, but he still managed to resist. Inside, he recorded another mark against Pu Yao. But Pu Yao's words still successfully stirred Zhuo's interest. He started to pay close attention to these Mo soldiers. The three groups of Mo soldiers raced from three directions. The black turtle that just broke through the black leech defense line ended up surrounded once again. Gong Sun Cha was motionless, his eyes straight and his expression still. Some people from the shield guard platoon discussed in low voices. Is Darren daydreaming? Darren has seemed slightly weird since his seclusion last time. The person who spoke was slightly worried. This kind of thing had happened multiple times before. Ever since the last seclusion period, Gong Sun Cha frequently wandered off in his mind. When was Darren ever normal? Another person rolled his eyes. That's so true. Everyone nodded. These words really struck their hearts. So, this is good, better than Darren smiling. Darren's bashful smile, everyone simultaneously shuddered. They seemed to recall something terrible and all of them felt cold. Oh, an ambiguous sound came from Gong Sun Cha's mouth. His dull eyes became focused again as he smiled shyly. Let us begin. Receiving the order, Vermilion Bird Camp instantly charged out. In the air, many sword lights shot out of the black turtle at the same time. The dazzling and beautiful sword lights were like fireworks that exploded in the air. The suddenly appearance of the Vermilion Bird Camp frightened everyone. No matter if it was Shi Yi and Ming Qing, or the three groups that were forming a circle at the front, or Liang Wei hiding in the bloody mist, they all changed expressions. The multicolored sword lights were sparkling in the air, but the Yaomao were not in a mood to admire this beauty. Sharp inhales rose. No one had expected this nondescript little ship was able to hold so many sword shio. The average outer appearance, the strong defensive capabilities, the carrying capacity that could rival intermediate and large-sized treasure ships. What kind of ship was this? No one knew, but every Mo battle general that had any experience could smell the danger contained inside. This kind of ship was like the assassin in the dark that could strike a fatal blow at the crucial moment. Thinking about thousands of sword shio being transported to the backlands without any signs, and at the moment the fighting was the fiercest, thousands of sword shio appearing behind them. The Yaomao's hearts suddenly felt cold. Shi gave a sky-shaking bellow. His eyes turned green. From the day he joined the military, it was the first time that any enemy had broken into his territory so easily. He felt shame at his display just now, complete shame. He charged at the very front. All the Mo soldiers at the front shouted angrily in unison. Without hesitating, they followed Shi Yi and leapt at the black ship. At this time, the thousands of multicolored sword lights filled Shi Yi and Lan Qing's visions. They were completely stunned. Bone-aching coldness caused their limbs to feel cold. Shi Yi suddenly howled angrily. His eyes were almost completely crisp green, and his body made to charge. Lan Qing's eyes and hands were fast. He pulled Shi Yi back and shouted. Send the news. Quick. Send the news to Darren. Shi Yi shook and reacted. He looked gratefully at Lan Qing and hurriedly took out a black insect from his bosom. He closed his eyes. A moment later, a drop of blood welled up on his fingertip. Shi Yi swiped the bead of blood on the head of the armored insect and the blood bead burrowed into the head of the armored insect rapidly. The armored insect hissed and then suddenly disappeared from Shi Yi's hand. Looking dazedly at the sky full of sword lights, Liang Wei did not detect that his limbs were so cold they were freezing. There was only one thought in his mind. This was a conspiracy. A conspiracy of the Xiuzhi. A devious ambush. Liang Wei's expression was ferocious, his hands tightly balled, his eyes filled with hate as he stared at the sky full of sword lights. Gradually, he relaxed his fists, and his eyes became calm again. He did not start moving immediately to go help the allies even though he knew that the other would definitely accept their help. But if this was a planned ambush, then the moves of the Xiuzhe would not end with just this. Calmed down, Liang Wei displayed astounding powers of judgment. With quick thought, he was able to judge, the Xiuzhe definitely would have reinforcements coming. He instantly sent out concealed scouts that stood guard in the surroundings. The scouts quickly passed back the information. A Xiuzhe troops were approaching at a fast speed. A thread of coldness flashed through Liang Wei's yes. The scar on his face was also murderous. As expected, they had come. Chapter 429, Mo Battle Methods. Ming Lai and Song Yuan were really to be pitied. Calamity flew straight at them as they were ambushed by Liang Wei. Even though the ambush did not cause too many fatalities as Ming Lai had maintained his guard, but it still caused them to become disarrayed. Liang Wei's hatred of Xiuzhe was carved deep into his bones after experiencing his last battle. Most of his troops were the lucky survivors of the Ice Frost Corps. Seeing Ming Lai and the others, his eyes instantly became bloodshot and murderous. One side had prepared for a long time, the other was responding hurriedly, even though Liang Wei's division did not have any experts, but they still suppressed Ming Lai's troop. Ming Lai's expression was grave. The configuration of the troop in front of them was not highly skilled, but their technique was fierce and they were fearless. His gaze landed on the young and handsome battle general in the middle of the formation, and was filled with shock. Ming Lai knew the military ranking of Yao very well. This troop that was pressuring him was not one of the core of the Yao. And this young battle general was just a silver battle general. How was this possible? When did the normal Yao corps have such skill? When did a silver battle general become his equal? His successive countermeasures were ineffective against the other. 5 breaths. 5 continuous breaths. Ming Lai had sent out 6 orders, but the state of the two sides had not changed at all. Song Yuan's expression also became serious. He was not a battle general but he could feel it more clearly. He felt as though they had landed in an enormous web and could not muster the strength to escape no matter what. A sword shio that was 10 zhang away from him was hit by several Yao arts at the same time. With a wail, the entire person shattered into ice powder. Wails rose and fell. The other side's cooperation was very high. The level of the Yao arts were not high, but as they cooperated, their power was very astounding. A hint of grief flashed through Song Yuan's eyes. Dying on the battlefield, even their souls could not escape. The Yao arts and sword lights illuminated the sky. Some entered the bloody mist and caused it to shift. The collision between the two was brief but fierce. Liang Wei remained unaffected and coldly stared at the other. His consciousness was spread like a huge net, every detail of the battlefield happening within his grasp. The defensive light shields of a combat Yao at the very front was shattered by several sword lights at the same time. He didn't even manage to make a sound before he turned into a spray of blood. Ice Heart Tundra, silently circulated, the heart like an icy tundra, unaffected by anything. Liang Wei had been very favored by the corps commander, who had secretly passed him the top Yao art of the Ice Frost Corps, Ice Heart Tundra. Liang Wei might just be a silver battle general, but after experiencing that difficult battle of protecting the rear during the retreat, he had completely been reborn. Upon detecting this, the Council of Elders permitted him to lead a troop. Liang Wei knew the advantages and disadvantages of the two sides. He had no experts so he definitely could not enter a face-off. The others' experts were constantly being protected. If one wanted to use numbers to exchange for the experts' deaths, the sacrifice was too high. Having made a successful attack, they did not linger and retreated. The bloody mist that covered Blood Sky Metropolis Jie was the best concealment for Yaomo. Thousands of combat Yao retreated in unison, their ranks organized. The combat Yao that were at the end had lights flashing on their hands. Stop! Ming Lai shouted. He called back his subordinates that were planning on chasing after the enemy. The others' formation was organized and there were no weaknesses. Ming Lai's expression was black. A counterattack would only cause them to land in the other's trap. The results of the battle quickly came out. Ming Lai had lost nearly 80 people, and the other had lost just 6. Such a skewed loss ratio was like a loud slap that landed on his face. The cold and indifferent gaze of the other as he had left was like the sharpest scorn. A silver battle general dared to be so arrogant in front of him. Ming Lai took a deep breath to maintain his calm. Song Yuan perceptively did not speak. Truthfully, he had also been stunned by that ferocious wave of attacks. He had started to gather experience on the outside world from when he was very young, and encountered many dangerous situations. But only today did he know that the dangers he experienced before was just child's play compared to war. In the blink of an eye, 80 people's lives were erased. How cruel was this? But what caused him to feel cold was the cool eyes of that young Yao battle general that had no emotion. One successful attack without any lingering behind, so clean and crisp it was scary. Looking at Ming Lai's black face, Song Yuan knew that just how terrible his Shixiang's mood was right now. He did not understand battle generals, but he did know that Ming Lai Shixiang's skill in Kunlun was among the top. Otherwise, their sect wouldn't have given the first battle to him. If the news that Ming Lai Shixiang had been tripped up on the hands on an unknown Yao battle general spread back to the sect, it would definitely cause a great ruckus. This place was really full of danger. Song Yuan's heart felt even more insecure. The fighting behind them did not attract Zhuo Mo's attention. His attention was completely on the 3 groups of Mo that were rushing at them. He looked very closely. Pu Yao's character was usually poor, but he would not speak nonsense. Upon close study, he instantly made a new discovery. Mo battle generals were different than Yao battle generals. Yao battle generals used their consciousness to control the troops. The troops were like limbs that advanced and retreated together. Mo battle generals did not care for troop formations at all. They were an unsightly mess and sprawl. But in Zhuo Mo's vision, the presences of those unorganized Mo soldiers were tightly gathered together. The presences of hundreds of Mo soldiers were gathered into a ball. Once it was one being, the pressure instantly was completely different. Zhuo Mo seemed to see hundreds of muscles crisscrossing and joining together, tensing and turning into a fist. The 3 groups of Mo soldiers were like 3 powerful fists. The Mo battle methods turn the complex into the simple, gather many into one, power overcoming technique, seemingly simple and extremely effective. The Mo battle general is the only one of the 3 kinds of battle generals that requires a person to be individually brave. Pu Yao's tone then changed. Your brain is stupid, you are more suited for the Mo battle methods. Zhuo Mo was eager as he looked on. How can I gather many into one? Oh, Wei knows, Pu Yao said irresponsibly. Wei opened his eyes with slight helplessness, and looked in dissatisfaction at Pu. Ever since he encountered the strange corpse and saw an existence even more ancient than his, Wei's desire to find a successor unconsciously faded greatly. Waking up from his obsession, he finally realized what he had guarded in the past had been lost in the river of time. The oath carved on the gravestone was only treasured by himself. Pu Yao could still encounter the descendants of his past fellows, and this maintained the connection between him and the world. He was not abandoned by time. Yet Wei was too ancient, so ancient that nothing could have been left. The strange corpse went to find his place of birth. Wei found with a grimace that he didn't even have a target to search for. Wei's desire to find a new successor drastically dropped. Wei, who had always wanted to show his existence, was disinterested when Pu Yao threw the problem at him. He said casually, "This is hard to learn." Harder than learning the Mo physique? Zhuo Mo asked. Wei stopped breathing and finally remembered that this person was a freak that easily cultivated the great Mo physique that ranked second among Colonel Mo physiques. It is not as difficult as Mo physiques. Wei decided to say the truth. Then teach me. Zhuo Mo's request burst out. He tried to widen his glistening eyes, and gave a desirous and fawning expression towards Wei. In terms of shamelessness, Wei was clearly not Zhuo Mo's opponent. He could only say, Mo physique and battle general are two different things, I do not know much. But when he saw Zhuo Mo's face turn towards him like a sunflower, he intelligently gave up on struggling. Mo battle generals are truly different than other battle generals. The first thing they need to learn is to echo with the power of their comrades. Echo with the power of comrades? Wei released a breath. The shameless expression on that face finally disappeared. He felt much more at ease and continued, yes, the power of Mo is the power of the fleshly body, of the true self. Only by echoing with the power of one's comrades can one communicate with one's comrades. The directions of power is much faster and accurate than sound. So it's like this, Zhuo Mo was thoughtful. Wei suddenly smiled. He spread his hands. Don't ask me how to echo the power of comrades. I don't know either, I'm just a gravestone armor. He hadn't lied. For some unknown reason, when he saw Zhuo Mo's brow tightly furrowed, Wei's mood that had just been helpless became much lighter. Echo the power of comrades, Zhuo Mo pondered. He seemed to comprehend something, but when he thought deeper, he had nothing. Immersed in thought, Zhuo Mo directly forgot the fight that was happening now. A moment later, he suddenly raised his head, excitement unable to be disguised from his face. Without another word, he jumped up from the ground and ran away. Compared to Zhuo Mo's new discoveries, Gongsun Cha was entirely familiar with the Mo battle methods. In war chess, he had faced all kinds of enemies. Even though the battle methods present were not the same as Pu Yao's battle methods in war chess, they were of the same vein. To Gongsun Cha, there was no difference. 3-section wave killing charge. The multicolored sword energies that had bloomed in the air brightened up. Howling sounded and filled the eardrums. In a brief amount of time, the sword shio of Vermilion Bird Camp pushed their speed to the max. The sword lights formed waves that charged at the three groups of Mo soldiers. Compared to the past, the present Vermilion Bird Camp was undoubted more mature. When they performed their trademark 3-section wave killing charge, they were even more masterful. The waves made from sword energies were not as ferocious and sharp as before, but were more bouncy, as though there was an invisible thread that connected all the sword energies. The two sides collided. A strange scene occurred. Like waves, the sword energies gathered and scattered. They were like blades that danced about like butterflies, continuously slicing layers off the Mo soldiers. The sword energies crisscrossed. In a blink, half of the Mo soldiers were dead or wounded. This scene stunned the entire field. His chest full of fury and battle intent, Shi Ye's body that just started to move seemed to be pulled to a complete stop by an invisible hand. He looked in disbelief at the waves of sword energies as though a basin of cold water was poured over his head, his limbs cold. Beside him, Lan Qing and the other Mo soldiers were shocked. When the black-faced Ming Lai saw this scene, it was as though he was paralyzed. Inside the bloody mist, Liang Wei's pupils suddenly shrank, his expression changed greatly, and his body entirely cold. Chapter 430, Black Horn Rhinoceros Mo. Unlike Sui Mo, Gongsun Cha noticed the combat behind them at once. He only glanced over before moving his gaze away. He couldn't help but shake his head at the performance of this group of Xiuzha, but his eyes lit up at the performance of the Yao. The Xiuzha's collective strength was a level higher than the Yao, but they were being suppressed by the Yao. Even if it was due to being ambushed, in Gongsun Cha's eyes, the performance of this group of sword Xiu was really not outstanding. Of course, he only glanced at them. The three factions were not very different in his eyes. If they landed in the hands of Yaoma, it would naturally be hard to keep their bodies intact, but if they landed in the hands of the sword Xiu, they definitely would not survive either. In such a sensitive place as the front lines, being a group of people with unclear origins, they would naturally be labeled as dangerous. To make it even worse was that they had too many valuable things on them that would breed envy in others and making them a target. If it was Gong Sun Cha on the other side, he would definitely slaughter this kind of fat sheep if he encountered one. Taking only a glance, Lil Tamisk put his attention back on the Mo soldiers in front of him. Even though he had fought more than once against Mo battle generals in war chess, there would always be a difference between reality and war chess. Especially a war chess design from a few thousand years ago. Lil Tamisk's focus was a calamity for the Mo soldiers. The two sides had the same general amount of manpower. Full of confidence, Lil Tamisk did not take the advantage based on numbers, but even so, the three groups of Mo soldiers were falling at an alarming rate in front of Lil Tamisk's most developed move, the three-section wave killing charge. The one-sided battle shocked everyone, especially Liang Wei and Ming Lai. The two were exceptional battle generals and deciphering battle was their basic technique. Battle general was the profession that the three major factions had, which was the most similar between the races and that each faction was the most familiar with. It had always been the case that the Yaoma and Xiuzha thought of each other as enemies and were most sensitive to this kind of information. Shocked, the two simultaneously made the same choice, ask for reinforcements from the main army. After doing this, the two who had cold sweats could finally relax enough to closely examine the battle which was reaching its end. After watching for a while, the two almost exclaimed at the exact same time in disbelief. Three-section wave killing charge. Three-section stab. The disbelief on the two's faces quickly became strange. Shixiang, what is three-section stab? Song Yuan couldn't help but ask. Three-section stab is three-section wave killing charge. Ming Lai stared at the battlefield with a strange expression on his handsome face. As if he was taking in his sleep, he said, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Shixiang. Song Yuan saw the situation was not right. Channeling Ling power, he shouted like thunder. Ming Lai shook and his unfocused eyes became clear again. He looked gratefully at Song Yuan and explained. I hadn't expected that the thing this person would use would be the three-section stab. Shidi may not know, but the three-section stab is a very ancient Yao battle tactic. This battle tactic was most popular 3,000 years ago, but as it heavily favored offense over defense, the Yao battle generals decreased their use of it, so now almost no one uses it. Yao. Song Yuan had a puzzled expression. But these people are clearly sword shio. The three-section wave killing charge is what the Yao call it, we usually call it the three-section stab. Actually, this kind of tactic is more suited for us sword shio. People have used it in the past, but it has a fatal flaw. Song Yuan became interested. What flaw? It cannot sustain itself. Ming Lai became relaxed again. He said in a deep voice, the strongest part of the three-section stab is that it gathers short-term explosiveness together, and cannot be stopped. But this kind of explosiveness cannot keep going. Three-section stab, it is most powerful in this charge. If the other can stop these three waves of attack, the situations of the two sides would instantly reverse. Song Yuan looked at the battlefield and then said with a shake of his head, they cannot hold against the three waves. Of course they will not hold up. Ming Lai said firmly. However, the defense line of the Mo is not so easy to penetrate. Mo defense lines are usually thick. The distance between each defense line is not far, and it is easy to get reinforcements. Creating such a large ruckus, there's no way the defensive lines behind will ignore it. Before his words landed, a group of approximately 2,000 Mo soldiers appeared in everyone's view like a black cloud. Not right, this isn't right. Swa Mo shook his head. In front of him, a one who was acting as his experimental subject was crying inside. But he didn't dare to show any discontent on the outside. Owen admired his fellows that were preparing to fight. The guard camp had finished preparing and were waiting to depart. Head Shu Long was personally leading. Every time he thought about the upcoming battle, he was excited. But, looking at the eager boss, and then thinking about his situation, he began to wither like a tomato in frost. Heavens! Why did boss suddenly want to experiment? Why did boss have to use him as the subject? Boss told him to release his presence in a steady flow. He could not understand at all what the use was in doing this. But he didn't dare to say that to boss and docilely allowed boss to move him around. Boss seemed to be trying something and would occasionally mutter. No good, this is not it. Not right, there's a problem. Owen felt as though he was an idiot, and boss was a madman. But even if boss was a madman, he was still boss. When this group of 2,000 Mo soldiers saw the remaining of their 100 soldiers left, the eyes of the battle general that was leading instantly turned red. With a furious bellow, he charged like a rampaging bull. Many bellows sounded in unison. The sky changed color and killing energy filled the air. They came extremely quickly. The 2,000 Mo soldiers were like an enormous fist of metal that was burning as it smashed towards the battlefield. Vermilion bird camp sword shio that were destroying the remaining soldiers couldn't help but simultaneously pause, and their strong hearts showed a slight crack. Black horn rhinoceros Mo. Ming Lai's pupils contracted. Song Yuan heard the great shock in Ming Lai's tone of voice and hurriedly looked over. These Mo soldiers were even more elite than the 3 previous groups of Mo soldiers. Most of them were wrapped completely in black-green armor. The surface of the armor was covered in beautiful patterns. Just from the sheen of this black-green armor, Song Yuan knew the quality of the material was extraordinarily hard. The presence of the Mo battle general at the very front was even more intimidating. His entire body seemed to be wrapped in the armor shell. The armor seemed to be of one body, but seemed to not restrain movement as though it was alive. He had a black-green horn at the top of his head, interlocking fangs that reached out from the armor and shrouded his face like a mask. This caused him to look extremely ferocious. The patterns on his armor were the most beautiful as they glimmered. Song Yuan murmured, "These are Mo. It is black horn rhinoceros Mo." Ming Lai's tone was heavy. It isn't cannon fodder like the ones before, this is a regular corps. Their frontal charge is very strong. See their black armor. It is hard to damage with normal flying swords. Not easy to defeat. He suddenly was curious. He wanted to know how these sword shio of unknown origins would deal with these troublesome black horn rhinoceros Mo. He could not guess. Ming Lai was not the only one that recognized the black horn rhinoceros Mo. Gongsun Cha also recognized them at first glance. But compared to the seriousness of Ming Lai, Lil Miss display could be considered calm. There was not a ripple in his gaze. His spread-out consciousness passed his orders to every sword shio in a flash. The members of Vermilion Bird Camp instantly disengaged with the enemies in front of them, and the formation shape quickly shrank. In a blink, they compacted into a ball, and at the center, waves of light rose. In a blink, a group of people appeared. Compared to the murderousness of the sword shio, this group of people looked calm on the surface. They wore normal cloth, were barefooted and empty-handed. Only some details on their bodies, like a yellow flower at their waist, a purple creeper wove through lock of hair, caused some of the detail-oriented spectators start to wonder who they were. These continuous lights also attracted the attention of the Mo battle general. Gravity flashed through his eyes, and was then replaced by strong confidence and battle desire. The other did not spread out their formation, did not roam around, but formed a circle of defense. This would perfectly allow them to express their full strength in a frontal charge. He didn't know who these people were. He didn't hesitate. He firmly believed that under this kind of powerful charge, nothing could stop them. He suddenly opened his mouth and gave a warbling yell. Instantly, all the black horn rhinoceros Mo underneath him also gave warbling yells. Their speed suddenly increased, and the tyrannical presence rose again. They were like a steely flood. Everything in front of their charge was crushed to pieces. The patterns on the black armor of the Mo battle general brightened. As he sprinted, he suddenly raised his right fist. "Kill!" all the Mo soldiers shouted in unison. An invisible power furiously flooded towards the upright fist of the battle general. A black-green light covered the right fist. The light increased at alarming speed. In the time it took to run a short 100 zhang, it became a ball of flowing green sap. There was a circle of black light around the energy. The distance between the two sides was less than 200 zhang. The domineering and savage presence of the battle general's right fist covered in light reached a peak. The Mo battle general glared angrily and shouted, "Kill!" The right fist was thrown out. Hum! The deep bellow that seemed to come from the deepest part of the ground caused everyone's hearts to shudder. When the green light left the hand, it grew in the air and was the size of a mountain in a blink. With a rush of air, it charged towards the vermilion bird camp that had formed a circle. Behind the green light, the 2,000 black horn rhinoceros Mo's presence reached a peak. With an unstoppable presence, it forcibly charged in front of vermilion bird camp. The peerless charge of the black horn rhinoceros Mo shrunk into a circle. Vermilion bird camp seemed as weak as an egg in front of this savage charge, as though it would be destroyed by this flood in the next moment. And at the same time, opportunity. A thread of harshness flashed through Ming Lai's eyes. Without any hesitation, he bit down and shouted with all his power, "Charge!" Chapter 431, Flower Slaves. The ambush of the Kunlun sword Xiu was very sudden. After being continually suppressed, Ming Lai finally displayed the skill of a great battle general. His grasp of timing was very precise. Just as everyone was shocked by the domineering charge of the black horn rhinoceros Mo, he unexpectedly chose to attack. Hidden in the bloody mist, Liang Wei's expression changed. He hadn't expected that the sword Xiu would suddenly attack. The situation of the battlefield was always one where if a hair was being pulled and the whole body would move. Ming Lai's sudden attack caused slight chaos on the battlefield. The full frontal charge of the black horn rhinoceros Mo was peerless, but their capability to resist charges was not strong. In terms of timing, the collision between Ming Lai's sword Xiu and the black horn rhinoceros Mo would be just after the black horn rhinoceros Mo finished their frontal attack on this little ship. The Mo battle general had enough confidence to completely annihilate the other's troops in one charge, but the other sword Xiu group's charge was vicious. That was exactly when they would be the weakest. The expression of the Mo battle general changed. Seeing the danger, Liang Wei could not care for anything else. He instantly ordered, "Attack." The remaining 2,000 battle Yao suddenly released like a tense spring and shot out like arrows out of the bloody mist. This string of changes happened in an extremely short amount of time but gave people the feeling that it was too much action for the eye to see. The Mo battle general's complexion was slightly pale. There were two troops hidden so close to him and he had not detected it at all. But the present situation did not allow for him to hesitate in the slightest. The enemy was right in front of him. Any hesitation would cause their situation to become even more terrible. Destroying this group of sword Xiu with the fastest speed was most beneficial for them. The battle intent rose in the chest of this Mo battle general. As his presence grew, his body lit up with black-green energy. The other black horn rhinoceros Mo beside him all copied him. A layer of black-green energy instantly came onto the bodies of every black horn rhinoceros Mo. Their movements were slightly pulled inwards. Like they were pieces of granite, they charged at Gongsun Cha's group. Victory was right in front of them. Ming Lai and Liang Wei's troops were like two arrows that came from the rear from two different directions. Most fatal was that the Mo soldiers that were approaching had an unreasonable charge that was like a mountain 30,000 caddies heavy, and unable to be stopped. That lightning-like enormous green energy was almost right in front of them. For some unknown reason, Lil Miss gave a smile at the corner of his mouth. He didn't make a move. A figure suddenly flew out from behind his back. A rainbow multicolored light rose up from bottom to top, and flashed past. Hiss. Like strong cloth being torn, the mountain-like green energy and the shimmering sword rainbow collided like two bubbles and disappeared. The Mo battle general's pupils suddenly shrank. Jean Dan. The other's troops had a Jean Dan. This was not unexpected to him. How was it possible that a treasure ship like this didn't have an expert? He did not panic due to this. Jean Dan's sword Xiao was not enough to make him feel panic. Once the black horn rhinoceros Mo started their charge, even a few Jean Dan could not escape unharmed, much less just one. The contact between the two would be in an instant. Just at this time, a dot of purple energy lit up in his view. What was this? He suddenly had a strong feeling of danger, but before he could respond, his legs suddenly weakened, his entire body losing control as he tripped forward. Not good. The people beside him flipped over. In such a high-speed charge, any slight loss of balance meant that their bodies would lose control. This came so suddenly that they tripped hard without having their guard up. The troop formation at the front instantly became chaotic. The Mo soldiers at the back saw the situation and forcibly twisted their bodies to try to avoid their fellows that were unbalanced at the front. Some Mo soldiers that were more skilled went with the flow and grabbed their fellows. But what was fatal was their presence. The presence that had been gathered into one suddenly had a short burst of chaos. And at this time, the flower Yao, that were being guarded by the vermilion bird camp sword Xiao, had released a flood of Yao arts they had prepared in their hands. The Yao arts they cast were very unique. Some were crisp green, some bright purple, some serene blue, all of different colors, but all of them held a presence that was strange and deep. There was no sound, no intimidating presence, no blinding energy light. Even these energies of various colors were like candles that flew lightly. These candle-like serene lights seemed to be the black daggers in the darkness. The Mo battle general suddenly smelt a faint sweet scent. His expression changed. He shouted urgently at the top of his lungs, "Careful! It's poison!" His heart sank to the bottom. Poison. It was poison. He had never expected the other to use this kind of move to resolve their charge. But he had to admire the skill of the other. This move grasped their weakness. Black Horn Rhinoceros Mo had powerful charges, outstanding defense. Normal methods could not defeat them at all, but using poison was a very effective method. A tiny thread of blue smoke floated past his eyes like the willow branches blown up in the wind. Time seemed to slow down, his body that was usually filled with power started to become heavy. Such powerful poison. His mind started to blur. They were going to lose. The Mo soldiers were a complete mess. Their steps were unsteady, their eyes unfocused, their breathing panicked as they fell all over the place. Even more alarming was that marks of all colors started to appear on their hard black-green armor. In a blink, these beautifully patterned armor were filled with all kinds of eerie multicolored marks. The flower Yao appeared in such a weird and terrifying manner on their first appearance on the battlefield. The flower Yao coexistence art. This strange and special spell caused those high-level Ling flowers to gradually transform. The flower poison that each flower Yao had cultivated were different. As they were tempered in the frighteningly abundant black fiendish energy of the sealed extinction battlefield, these flower poisons became even more toxic and could directly wound the soul. No matter if it was Yaomua or Xiuzhe, the most troublesome situation was wounds to the soul. In addition, their flower poisons were formed from cultivating, flower Yao coexistence spell, and had some attributes of Yao poisons. Their flower poisons each became a unique flower poison that was completely different from other flower poisons. These flower slaves that had a constant smile on their faces, went barefoot and wore cloth were the true smiling assassins. It was the first time Gongsun Cha led the flower slaves into battle. He didn't have a complete grasp of their abilities. He had called out all the flower slaves, and not knowing their own effectiveness, the flower slaves also released all of their flower poisons without holding anything back. It caused every inch of space to be filled with dozens of types of flower poisons. The MO soldiers that had no defense took a hard fall. The vermilion bird camp sword shio that were protecting the flower slaves also had unnatural expressions. The scene in front of them also frightened them. The strange yet powerful flower poisons caused them to show expressions of fear. The unstoppable flood instantly dissipated, and really shocked them. If it was them who did not have any defenses up, their outcome would be the same as these MO soldiers. They securely guarded the outside perimeter and didn't dare to take a step forward. Sword shio with good vision were even able to see the tiny thread-like forms of flower poison that floated in the air 3 zhang away from them. Everyone felt slightly intimidated. There were no wails, no groans, only the chaotic sounds of impacts, falling, and then everything gradually turned to a deathly silence. A hair-raising deathly silence. The flower slave's slightly exhausted panting was clearly heard, as though it was drawing the curtain to this hair-raising deathly silence. The two troops that were shooting forward like arrows seemed to be pulled back by an invisible rope. Without any agreement, they both decelerated, and then stopped. The two troops were silent. Terror filled everyone's face, no matter if it was sword shio or combat yao. The depths of their eyes were filled by those multicolored beautiful lights. Ming Lai and Song Yuan's faces were ashen. They dazedly looked at the scene in front of them that seemed to come from hell. Such a powerful poison. Song Yuan stammered out. It was not rare to see shioja that cultivated poison. They were mostly roaming shio. Song Yuan had seen many powerful poison-cultivating roaming shio before, but like this, to poison several thousand at once, it was the first time he had seen it. Ming Lai stared hard at those barefoot and smiling people. He did not realize that he had almost bitten through his lips. What were the origins of these people? So many sword shio, it had to be a sword-cultivating sect. But which sword-cultivating sect was this powerful? Able to destroy 2,000 black horn rhinoceros MO with a wave of the hand, this was an attention-catching power. He had seen it clearly just now. From the moment those strange poison-cultivating roaming shio appeared, the sword shio that were guarding the perimeter were as steady as rock facing the charge of the black horn rhinoceros MO and didn't move at all. Well trained. The words popped up in his mind. Thinking back, even the usually proud Ming Lai had to admire the skill of the other battle general. From the beginning 3-section stab to suddenly using poison. It had to be said that this was a battle that suddenly occurred. To be able to find the other's weakness in an instant and find a method of defeating them, this was skill. But who were these sword shio? And so many roaming shio? What was their goal in coming here? Ming Lai's expression became uncertain. Liang Wei's limbs were icy, his face slightly white. However, he did not retreat. He stared at the people that were being protected at the center. The scene just now filled his heart with terror, but at this moment, another discovery attracted his attention. Yao poison. Those flower poisons seemed very strange, but it was definitely a kind of yao poison. Liang Wei firmly believed that he had not seen it wrong. How come these shioja could use yao poisons? Were those barefoot people yao? But they didn't look like it. Then why? Countless riddles spun in his mind. These riddles caused him to suppress the urge to turn and flee and to maintain his distance to the other. He had to get to the bottom of this. Chapter 432, Kunlun having tried for a while, Sui Mo had not made any breakthroughs. This was extremely dispiriting for him. Was he not suited to be a battle general? He furrowed his brow and frowned. Their troop looked very powerful, but in reality, Gongsun Cha was the only qualified battle general. Xu Long was studied and worked hard, but as a commander, he was just average. If Gongsun Shidi became entangled in battle, then their situation would become extremely dangerous. But the cultivation method of guard camp had caused them to be unsuitable for use under Lil Miss command. This was a problem that Suemo had kept in mind this whole time. Without a suitable battle general, the guard camp's offensive capabilities could not be fully expressed. In this chaotic time, combat strength was the safety net of survival. Having combat abilities but unable to use them, how could Suemo be content? Only today when he saw the Mo battle general's fighting methods did Suemo finally realize. No wonder Lil Miss did not like to command guard camp. The cultivation method of guard camp meant that they were meant to battle in a different way than Vermilion Bird camp. Suemo also found that this straightforward battle method of Mo battle generals was very suited for him. He couldn't help but think, if he could express the combat abilities of guard camp. Yet while the idea was beautiful, reality was cruel. According to Wei, the first step was to feel the power of his fellows, so he had found a one to be his practice partner. But no matter how hard he tried, there wasn't a response. Mo battle generals required strong bodies. This wasn't a problem for him at all. His great Mo physique had gone through its second maturation, his body was as hard as steel and hard to damage with a flying sword. But no matter how he tried, he could not feel a Wen's power. Was it that the three powers in his body had merged into one and was preventing him from feeling a Wen's power? He couldn't help but furrow his brow. He was helpless about the situation inside his body as well. Even though it had reached a new equilibrium, but even Pu Yao and Wei could not offer anything about this once-in-a-thousand-year circumstance. He needed to explore everything by himself, and what was most fatal was that Pu Yao and Wei's experiences were mostly ineffective. This was the greatest loss for Suemo. But the situation was beyond his control since long ago. He could only endure it. Was he fated to always explore on his own throughout his life? A thread of bitterness rose in Suemo's heart. At Wukong Mountain, he had to explore by himself. He finally encountered Pu Yao, the spells and Yao arts had come to him as easily as water flowing. But just after being able to smoothly sailing for a short while, the change inside his body had caused Pu Yao and Wei's experiences to lose effectiveness in one night. Those powerful Yao arts and spells casually waved goodbye to him, disregarding his lingering gaze and flew away. In the period of one night, he had returned to where he started. What sort of world was this? Suemo grimaced. However, he could only grimace. He was not demotivated. Fate was like those Yao art problems. You could not choose which problem it would give you. Your choice was either to work on solving it, or wait for death. As to whether or not it could be solved, that was the next problem. It seemed GE is fated to walk the high difficulty path. I really no way about it, experts are always like GE. Comforting himself like this, Suemo rubbed his face and tried to keep his mind alert. He sat down and started a new round of thought and experiment. This one is Kunluan's disciple Ming Lai, responsible for defending this area. Elders, please forgive me for coming late to the rescue. Ming Lai said loudly, and bowed towards the distant black turtle. He put his attitude extremely low. Kunluan disciple. When the people of Vermilion Bird Camp heard these words, their expressions suddenly changed. Kunluan disciple, Lil Miss narrowed his eyes, the smile on his bashful face increasing as he said to himself, such a coincidence, didn't think we really would encounter people of Kunluan. Cold snorts sounded around him. Everyone's expressions darkened. If they had to choose a sect that was most unwelcome among Suemo's group, then it was undoubtedly Kunluan. Now people from the sect of Kunluan were right in front of them. No one would have good faces. Song Yuan's eyes were keen and noticed the fury and murderousness on the faces of the Vermilion Bird Camp sword show. They don't seem to be very friendly towards us. His heart shook and he said in a low voice. Ming Lai's heart jumped, but his expression instantly resumed normality. He said in a similarly light tone, "No matter how unfriendly they are with us, they can't be in agreement with Yamo." "That's true." Song Yuan thought from another direction and released the thought. No matter what grievances this group of people had with Kunlun, everyone was Xiuzha and belonged to the same camp against the Yamo. Ming Lai said loudly, "Seeing your honored division's style today, it really causes admiration. But this place is the territory of the Mo, extremely dangerous. Gentlemen do not say at dangerous places, everyone, you are a disciple of Kunlun." A male voice came from the black ship and interrupted Ming Lai. Ming Lai said, "Yes. Your honored division." The voice inside the boat once again interrupted him, "Who is Lin Qian to you?" Ming Lai was shocked. He said in surprise, "Sir knows eldest Xixiang." At the side, Song Yuan also showed shock. Inside the black turtle, the faces of Wei Sheng and the others changed again. Just now, Wei Sheng suddenly recalled the riddle of Lin Qian's identity and suddenly made an inquiry. Wei Sheng had been suspicious of Lin Qian's identity long ago. He had speculated that Lin Qian would have a connection to Kunlun, but he never thought that the slightly mysterious young person that was not at all eye-catching was the eldest Xixiang of Kunlun sect. Gong Sun Cha's expression also couldn't help but change. The two exchanged a look and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Kunlun was the real ruler of the entire Kunlun realm. The eldest Xixiang of Kunlun sect, the future sect leader of Kunlun, his rank was so venerable, his identity so noble that other than the present sect leader of Kunlun, no one could rival him. What secret did Wukong Sword sect have that caused the future Kunlun sect leader to come in person? Gong Sun Cha was alright. He had entered Wukong Sword sect relatively late and his feelings towards Wukong Sword sect was not deep. But Wei Sheng had grown up in Wukong Sword sect and held deep feelings. Shocked, he couldn't help but show deep worry. A little sect like Wukong Sword sect would not have any power to resist under the influence of Kunlun. Ming Lai saw the other had become silent again and confusion rose. "Can Sir give your name?" "A friend of eldest Xixiang is a friend of our Kunlun. We will act as hosts." "Where's Xixiang?" Gong Sun Cha asked Zhong Ru beside him in a low voice. Zhong Ru closed his eyes and opened them a moment later. He said, bewildered, "Darren seems to be meditating." "Meditating?" Gong Sun Cha raised an eyebrow. He turned to look at Wei Sheng. "What does eldest Xixiang think? They are most likely starting to suspect our origins now. What do you think?" Wei Sheng asked warily. Gong Sun Cha gave a shy smile and did not answer. "It is not suitable for us to be targeted by Kunlun at present." "You mean?" Wei Sheng had a shocked expression. Gong Sun Cha raised his white hand and lightly sketched a chop. Hiss. Wei Sheng inhaled sharply, and the people around them also showed shock. But in a moment, everyone's shock turned to excitement and eagerness. Kunlun. That was Kunlun. For every sword Xiu, Kunlun was akin to a holy ground. And in reality, Kunlun was the holy ground of sword Xiu. Of the four-realm heaven, Kunlun was the most honored. This honor was not born out of thin air, but fought for by Kunlun sword Xiu using the flying sword of their heart in that great war 3,000 years ago. Even the subordinate sects of Kunlun had no weak people, much less true Kunlun disciples. Wei Sheng hadn't expected Gong Sun Cha to be so daring to know that the other was a Kunlun disciple and still dare to kill. However, Wei Sheng was not a stupid person. He knew that he had exposed their identities when he had asked for Lin Qian's identity. Ming Lai only needed to pass this information back. With Lin Qian's intelligence, he would most likely guess it was them. Gong Sun Cha was correct. If they were targeted by Kunlun now, then they would be in danger. He also thought about Wukong Sword sect. Strength flashed through his eyes. He nodded heavily. Okay. That heavy word was like a vase that broke. Thick killing intent spread out. Liang Wei heard the exchange between the two and his heart continued to sink. The two seemed to be old acquaintances. He suddenly found his thinking just now was truly absurd. How could Xiuzhi cultivate Yao poisons? It probably was a Ling poison that the other had made that was similar to Yao poison. Thinking about this, he prepared to take his subordinates and retreat. If these two troops allied together, then it would no longer be so easy for them to retreat. Fortunately, he had acted the latest. So even though his attacking position was not good, it was very suited for retreat. At this time, a change suddenly occurred. The little black ship suddenly lit up in his vision. Boom! Like fireworks exploding, sword energies shot out. Liang Wei's expression changed. Was the other attacking? He was so frightened he almost shouted, but he perceptibly caught a detail out of the corner of his eye. His figure instantly stilled. Those sword energies. They were all heading towards the Kunlun sword Xiu. What was going on? Inner conflict? Liang Wei was stunned where he stood with bewilderment on his face. The combat Yao beside him were all dumbstruck. The other's attack had occurred so suddenly without a hint of warning that the Kunlun sword Xiu did not react immediately. Their ranks shifted. The sword Xiu first had astonishment on their faces, and then they showed fury. Ming Lai was both shocked and angry. You cowards dare! When was Kunlun ever attacked by other sects first? Just the two words Kunlun had crushed countless sects before. Today, there was someone that knew their origins and dared to attack them. This was the first time Ming Lai had encountered such a thing. Fury burned in his heart. He unhesitatingly went forward and shouted angrily, Kunlun! Kill! The sword lights of the Kunlun sword Xiu lit up. Watching from a distance, Liang Wei started tightly at the sword lights that drew out beautiful curves. There was only one phrase echoing in his mind. Surround. Tactical surround. The other's intentions suddenly became clear, they intended to not leave even one alive. Chapter 433, Grapple. Under Liang Wei's shocked gaze, Ming Lai's troop was like a sharp great sword that pierced straight into the threads of sword lights that came at them and twisted with the flow. Their presence was concentrated and sharp. The black ship sword Xiu's sword energies scattered like fireworks. In front of Ming Lai's forces, the threads of sword energies seemed to break with a touch. The sword Xiu from the black ship that came hurriedly dodged to the side. The presence of Ming Lai's troop had become such that no one dared to stand up to them. The terror in Ming Lai's heart had also dissipated long ago. The confidence of a gold battle general filled every corner of his body. Layers of sword Xiu were protecting him. The pine script sword was in the hands of Song Yuan Shidi, and he was looking about warily. The other 5 Jindan sword Xiu steadily controlled their position. These Jindan were not from Kunlun but they were the best from their respective sections. Ming Lai's master had carefully chosen these people to ensure his safety. Just this composition was enough to fill him with confidence. The Kunlun realm was the largest realm of the 4-realm heaven. The borders were vast and near endless. Due to having abundant battalions, the composition of their armies could not help but become complex, so there were divisions of far, near, outer, and inner. While they were all Jindan, the Jindan sword Xiu of normal sects had the lowest benefits in a battalion. The Jindan sword Xiu from Kunlun's numerous subordinate sects had much better benefits, and Kunlun disciples' benefits were a step above that. Inner sect disciples were mostly the leaders of the battalions. Ming Lai battalion's Jindan were all from subordinate sects who were completely loyal from top to bottom. The relationships between these subordinate sects to Kunlun were very close, and the sects functioned as Kunlun's protective perimeter. Even more, there was Song Yuan Shidi to help secure the flank. Thinking about his prior shock just now, Ming Lai couldn't help but feel a thread of shame. He focused and decided that he must win this battle. While the identity of a Kunlun inner sect disciple was honored wherever they went, but in reality, the competition between inner sect disciples far surpassed the imaginations of everyone. How many Kunlun inner sect disciples were there? Even Ming Lai did not know. But it was not strange that he could command one battalion since he was a gold battle general and an inner sect disciple. But to get assigned his mission this time, it had taken great effort. Before leaving, Master had kept on telling him to work hard. The sect leader of this generation was extremely fair, and would reward meritorious service. If he could get a good victory on the front line, the fruit would be enough to benefit all of their sect line. Of course, he would get the biggest slice. Thinking about this, his gaze unconsciously heated up. Sweeping across the entire battlefield, his right hand started to count, all the Ling power inside his body moving as he channeled, celestial balance, to the maximum. In his eyes, there seemed to be dots of light spinning. As these star-like dots of light continued to spin, the battlefield gradually became clear in his mind. He suddenly opened his eyes, and coldness flashed past them. As expected, the other was not ordinary. His battalion was thrust straight in the middle of the other's troops like a dagger. The swords showed along the way that seemed to flee like alarmed birds, furiously sprinting away, but once out of harm's way they simply rejoined their own formation. He had inserted himself into the other's troops, and the other had completely surrounded him. Ming Lai smirked inside. If normal battle generals were surrounded, they would definitely panic, but for Ming Lai who was skilled in tactics, this was a great opportunity. In his eyes, the other's enclosure was like a cloth bag that only looked strong but would break with a mere poke of his finger. His battalion was gathered together, united. Wasn't this just the kind of sharp object that he needed right now? Come! An excited blush floated onto Ming Lai's face as though he had seen his prey. Wood's Horn Formation. The horn was the first of the 7 mansions that belonged to the Eastern Azure Dragon, who represented the wood element, and similar to the horn of the dragon it was best used for killing. 2. Wood's Horn Formation was a classic assault battle formation. The sword Xiu, who were familiar with Ming Lai Darren for quite a while now, instantly understood that they were going to make a move. Without any hesitation or keeping anything back, the Ling power in their bodies circulated at full power. The flying swords in their hands started to vibrate and hum like starving and bloodthirsty wild beasts. Slight tingling numbness spread over their entire bodies as the battle presence erupted from the deepest part of their souls. Kunlun. The flying swords rose up just like these thunder-like roars with that deep pride and zealotry. In an instantly, the sword energies were like a tsunami that came surging forth. A smear of slight red unconsciously blushed from Gongsun Cha's face. This caused him to look like a shy and bashful neighbor's boy. But landing in the eyes of Zhong Ru and the others standing close to him, they instantly understood, Gongsun Darren was excited. Yes, Gongsun Cha really was excited. In this short instant, the skill the other had displayed surpassed his expectations. In suddenly occurring battles like this, the room for a battle general to act was not large. Other than the first responsibilities of a battle general, what it tested was the power of the troops. A mature troop usually did not need the direction of the battle general when it first encountered an attack and would instinctively respond correctly. Even Gongsun Cha's consciousness needed a brief amount of time to make a response. In this instant, the Vermilion Bird Camp sword Xiu that were closest to Ming Lai battalion made their response. The flying swords in their hands turned to streams of light that stabbed towards the other's troops. Their bodies moved at the same time as their enemies, pulling them to a position parallel to the other, which tightly followed Ming Lai battalion. These dozens of sword lights did not stop Ming Lai battalion from attacking but caused a few sword Xiu at the flanks of the troops to pause for a brief moment. This seemed as though it was an insignificant effect. It had to be said that even in everyday training, it was not possible for the battle formation to be perfect every time. No one paid attention. Even those dozens of sword Xiu that were affected did not pay attention. In their eyes, these people were like flies and could only disgust them. And if they placed too much of their attention on these flies, then the power of the wood's horn formation would weaken. But they did not know the person who they were facing was a person who had heartily survived a great and immeasurable amount of abuse. After facing Pu Yao's horrific and perverse pressure, Gong Sun Cha was extremely sensitive to slight changes on the battlefield. He instantly caught this slight change. His consciousness unhesitatingly moved. The sword energies that were scattered like threads suddenly gathered towards the flanks of Ming Lai battalion. Looking from afar, it seemed as though threads were tangling themselves onto Ming Lai battalion. They roamed parallel to the flanks of the others' troops. If they found a chance, they would go and tear off a piece. The amount of threads that were catching on increased and were becoming thicker. The Kunlun sword shio that were on the flanks instantly had a headache. If the previous duos and trios of sword shio were just flies that could only disgust them, they were now akin to packs of wild wolves as their numbers increased. If they were the tiniest bit careless, the other would tear off a piece of their force. Their attention unconsciously moved to the vermilion bird camp sword shio that were occasionally roaming beside them. It was without their detection that the presence of the entire assault troop slowly weakened. Ming Lai detected the danger. The great Damo physique was the power that Suemo trusted the most. After his body reached equilibrium again, his great Damo physique followed his will again. But the feeling of using the great Damo physique now was completely different than it had been in the past. The change in every piece of muscle in his body would also pull along changes in the other two powers. The Ling power that stuck like oil and the consciousness that wrapped the muscles and tendons like vines had caused Suemo to truly experience what it was like to have his whole body move by pulling a hair. Under the effect of the great day banded flame, they were always in balance. This also meant that any new change required a new equilibrium. Suemo was currently trying to find the fulcrum. A point that he could detect the power of his fellows. This kind of search was like searching in the darkness without his eyes, slowly searching with just his hands. Not far away from him, the dejected Awen felt as though he was a candle that was continuously giving off light. He felt so stupid. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he stared in shock at Darren, whose eyes were closed. Had it just been his imagination? He was puzzled. After staring at Darren for a long time, there wasn't any response. It was his imagination. Awei twisted his mouth and pulled a face at Darren. Suddenly, his expression froze on his face as though he was struck by lightning. Nearby, Darren's body shook. He was like an old monk in meditation, but an indescribable presence spread out from Darren's body. After a while, Awen understood. This was the presence of power. It was the presence of the great Damo physique. Awen was uncertain. The presence of Darren's great Damo physique was intimidating normally, but it was completely different compared to now. Everyone was familiar with the presence of the great Damo physique as all of the hardship guards were cultivating the Great Day Hardship Guard that Pu Yao had modified. That was why Awen had immediately detected this familiar presence. Outer release of presence. Awen did not understand what Suemo was doing and was confused. Mo's skills cultivated the power of the flesh. This physical power was contained in their flesh and blood, and could not be released on the outside like Ling power and consciousness. He tilted his head and thought about how Darren was able to accomplish this. Just at this time, his body suddenly shook without warning. What was this? Awen was shocked. He hadn't moved just now. At this time, his body shook again. His eyes widened and his gaze landed on Suemo's body. In his eyes, Darren's body shook. Before he could muster a response, he began to shake uncontrollably, as if his body was possessed. What was going on? Frightened, Awen found that his body was shaking like dice. No matter how much he wanted to stop, his body did not respond at all and still uncontrollably shook. In his eyes, Suemo's body was shaking at the same frequency, but the magnitude was much smaller. This strange situation almost caused Owen to go crazy. His mind was now completely blank. Celestial balance is the fourth star of the Northern Dipper. 2. The Eastern Azure Dragon in Chinese mythology represents spring and the wood element. The Eastern Azure Dragon is made up of 7 constellations, each called a mansion. These are the horn, neck, root, room, heart, tail and winnowing basket. Chapter 434, Formation Change. Ming Lai hadn't even managed to send out an order before his field of vision widened. They had completely broken through the others' encirclement. But Ming Lai did not feel any joy at all. His heart slowly sank. The others' reaction speed was faster than he could have ever imagined. They did not face their charge at all, only tightly following them, attacking and then retreating at once. If his own force was a screw that was spinning at high speed, then the enemy were the threads that wrapped themselves around it. Even worse was that due to the others' response, they were gradually losing speed. Speed was most important factor of a charging assault. If they lost speed, these bothersome enemies that were like strings would instantly completely encircle them. At that time, they would end up in an even more reactive situation. The enemies roaming around them were like cunning packs of wolves. They would gather and scatter abruptly like the wind. Twinkling brilliance formation. Ming Lai quickly made a decision. The troop that had been attacking at high speed seemed to curl up like a worm. In a blink, they switched from the Woods Horn formation to the Twinkling Brilliance formation. This meant that from this moment, they switched from assault to defense. It had to be said that Ming Lai had some skill. The two had only fought for 2 rounds, and he had already detected the problem. His reactive ability was slower than his foes, and his sword Xiu were not as experienced as the others. Understanding his disadvantages, Ming Lai decided to pull the rhythm of battle into formation battle. Formation fighting was different than encounter fighting. If fighting encounters were determined by the experience and reaction of the sword Xiu, then formation battle competed on the battle determination and quality of the 2 sides as well as the average strength of the sword Xiu. In this area, Ming Lai had absolute confidence. Every sword Xiu of his battalion had been carefully selected from different sections. The lowest cultivation among them was 2nd Stratum Ningmai. Each person also had their unique skill, and they had never slacked off in daily training. He dared to state that they were an elite force. If he had to say what weakness this troop had, then it would be that they had not gone through the test of battle. Formation fighting was undoubtedly more suitable for them. The front and the back ranks joined up, so Ming Lai battalion quickly set down layers of defenses. It was possible to see their training from this. From an assault formation to a defensive formation, the entire process was smooth and natural, completed in an extremely short amount of time. Battalions were a very unique group in 4-realm heaven. No matter what type of Shouja, the stronger they were, the bigger their temper. Normal Shouja were not willing to go to a place like battalion where they had to follow the rules. For battle generals, the obedience of his subordinates was more important than having individual power. The benefits from being in a battalion were better than other places, but Jindan Shouja would not be badly treated no matter where they went. Who was willing to go to a battalion to suffer that? This was also why Kunlun realm had countless sects, but there were not many sects that had battalions. Only colossal entities like Kunlun, that controlled an enormous population, could selectively choose the Shouja who fit their requirements. The sword Xiu that came from subordinate sects were trained in a completely different manner than normal disciples. From a young age, they were trained in the manner of battalions. All the members of Ming Lai battalion were such cultivators. Quickly entering defense mode, no one panicked. Everyone methodically entered their own positions. Vermilion Bird Camp went along with the flow and took back the advantage of the battlefield. With a whoosh, they completed the encirclement again. The two landed in a standoff again. Gong Sun Cha understood what the other was planning with slight thought. He couldn't help but feel slight amazement. It seemed the other battle general wasn't an idiot. To be able to notice their own weakness in such a short amount of time and intelligently use their advantage, not every person could do this. This person who had come from Kunlun had not had the so-called pride of fame go to their head. That really wasn't easy. However, he wasn't a match for encounter battle, so would he be able to reverse it for formation battle? A barely discernible smile flashed on Gong Sun Cha's lips. It did not cause anyone warmth and was like a blade that appeared in the air. Finishing their encirclement, Vermilion Bird Camp did not rashly attack but instead seemed to be waiting. "Darren, what are they planning?" the subordinate spoke with puzzlement. He was confused by that dazzling series of changes. Liang Wei tightly stared at the battlefield and said without turning his head, "They are planning to have a formation battle." Formation battle? The subordinate was even more confused. Liang Wei did not explain, and deep wariness flashed through his eyes. The battle generals on the two sides were both very powerful. If it was him, he didn't dare to guarantee that he could best them. It might have been all right for him to lose to Minglai Battalion. He did not know their name, but the Kunlun emblems on their bodies was too eye-catching. It was possible to see with a glance. A battalion of Kunlun, it was natural they would not be lacking. What shocked him the most was the battle general inside the black ship. This unknown and mysterious battle general had forcibly suppressed this battalion from Kunlun from the beginning till now. If using poison could have been called trickery, then the collision he just saw now was not, it was a demonstration of skill. His eyes didn't dare to waver because he believed what would be coming next would be an even crueler formation battle. In an instant, his pupils suddenly shrank. This wasn't right. Having finished surrounding the enemy, the black ship Sword Shio looked as though they were roaming aimlessly around the outside. But there seemed to be a structure that gradually became clear between these Sword Shio. This was a battle formation. It definitely was a kind of battle formation. Liang Wei did not feel any joy at his realization. His eyes were extremely wide, fearful of missing the slightest detail. This was not strange. In reality, the Xiuzhe, Yao, and Mo were very familiar with the formations of each camp. He was able to recognize Ming Lai's battalion's Twinkling Brilliance formation at a glance. But Liang Wei was unfamiliar with the formation of the black ship battle general. What kind of battle formation would it be? His mind moved quickly. He put himself in that position. If it was him, what battle formation would he use at this time? Twinkling Brilliance formation was a defensive formation, but it did not emphasize defense. Rather, it was famed for its ability to change. There were many variations of Twinkling Brilliance formation. Every setup had many modifications, and it was liked by Xiuzhe battle generals due to this. What battle formation was suitable for defeating the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation? The indiscernible lines and structures in Liang Wei's eyes gradually became clear, and his curiosity was also drawn out. The skill that the black ship battle general had shown was very high, and filled him with anticipation. The structure finally became clear. Little teams that spun were like a pile of gears shoved together. They spun at high speeds without stopping. What battle formation is this? Liang Wei's vice commander said what everyone was thinking. Liang Wei did not know either, but he did not make a sound. He knew the mysterious black ship battle general definitely would not do something meaningless. What they did not know was that in all the major Yaojia, this type of battle formation was the most popular battle formation of the moment. When Xiao Mo Gu and Yu Heng had their battle, they had already reached the front lines. A battle maniac, Liang Wei took his troops and spent all their time roaming bloody sky metropolis Jia in search of prey. They were completely ignorant of what had happened back home. Everyone widened their eyes. Zuomo opened his eyes, and they were filled with ecstasy. Fulcrum. He finally found that fulcrum. He hadn't just found that fulcrum, he finally understood how Mo battle generals gathered everyone's power together. The power of the flesh could not leave the cage of the body, but it could connect everyone's power through an unique method, resonance. Yes, resonance. Sui Mo was not unfamiliar with resonance. This kind of scenario was repeatedly mentioned in low-level forging, especially for forging items like 8 treasure sound boxes. However, the resonance between the power of the body was much stronger than the resonance of low-level talismans like 8 treasure sound boxes. This was a kind of resonance that was invisible, it didn't have sound. It was this kind of resonance that was able to gather everyone's power into one. The use of the battle general was to channel their own power and guide everyone along to complete group resonance. This was a powerful ability. Sui Mo suddenly understood. It was like opening a new window into another mysterious world. He also finally understood why the battle methods of Mo battle generals were so strange. It was only the Mo who had such strong bodies that could create such powerful vibrations and reach resonance. Sui Mo stood and secretly channeled the great Day Mo physique. He raised his head and saw a panicked Awen. He laughed. Don't be nervous. He then said, what do you feel? Awen hesitated and then said, like my body is not in my control, like something is pulling me, it's a very strange feeling. Try to channel your Mo skill, Sui Mo said right after. Heart beating wildly, Owen carefully channeled his Mo skill. Threads of black smoke came out of his body and formed panels of black armor on the surface of his body. He quickly became covered in armor. The layers of light, slender, and long black feathers made him look like a large bird. Follow what I do, Sui Mo said. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly threw out a punch. A faint gold fist energy left his hand. Awen unhesitatingly flicked and thrust with his black spear. A black energy left his spear. Yet what happened after that caused Awen to widen his eyes. The black energy he had released flew out of the spear point, and drew towards Sui Mo's faint gold fist energy as though it was being attracted by a magnet. In a blink, the black energy entered Sui Mo's fist energy as though it was a baby sparrow returning to its nest. The fist energy grew a sliver, the sound it created increasing and deepening as though something was shaking. In the center of the faint gold fist energy, a bean-sized, black dot was visible to see. Awen gaped. What was this? When the spear energy left the spear point, he had detected a great suctioning force. But he could also feel that he had not lost complete control of the spear energy. Such a strange feeling. Even though the great and little Mo kill of the Crow Fiend Mo killing formation could gather many into one, but it felt completely different this time with Darren. In front of Awen, Sui Mo grinned widely, his eyes lit up as he snickered dumbly. Was there anything that embodied the method of many fighting against the few like this? No. Definitely not. This was undoubtedly the ultimate move for gang fighting. Gu really is a genius. Sui Mo became excited the more he thought, and eagerly ran towards guard camp. If he was going to play, he was going to play big. Twinkling Brilliance is the 7th star of the Northern Dipper. This makes it a match for Ming Lai's Celestial Balance, which is also a part of the Northern Dipper. Chapter 435, Red Eyes Burning. Beautiful streaks of light in the distance were the sword-light energies from flying swords rushing by. The light of fire, explosions, and all kinds of spells reflected against Liang Wei's handsome face. The scar on his face was like an earthworm struggling at the boundary of light and darkness. He had stopped breathing. The upcoming climax to the battle caused the temperature of his blood to rocket up. His mouth and throat was dry, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his chest. He suppressed the desire for combat in his chest. His stubborn gaze was focused and fanatical in the light. But Liang Wei quickly frowned. The two sides had not fully come into contact. They were still in the early stages of probing. In Liang Wei's eyes, the actions of the black ship sword Xiu were somewhat amateurish. He couldn't help but be bewildered. Twinkling Brilliance formation was not an obscure battle formation. Even though the Twinkling Brilliance formation that these Kunlun sword xiu used had many modifications, but it did not deviate significantly from the conventional structure of a Twinkling Brilliance formation. There were many methods to deal with the Twinkling Brilliance formation, but almost all the solutions followed one rule: attack the central defense area. The central defense area of the Twinkling Brilliance formation was its strongest defensive area, but it was also the crux of the entire battle formation. If that was broken, the entire battle formation would quickly be defeated. Twinkling Brilliance battle formation was one of the battle formations that Xiuzhi battle generals most frequently used. Supposedly, the one who had created this battle formation was a sword xiu battle general. As a testament to its exceptional power, the formation had gained widespread usage in less than 200 years. The Black Ship's battle general seemed unfamiliar with the Twinkling Brilliance formation. Compared to the spectacular command abilities he had shown earlier, the skill he showed now was as if a completely different person had taken command. Had someone else taken control of their side? Liang Wei found it weird. Gongsun Cha really did not know the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation. But his eyes were very powerful. The two seemed to just begun their face-off, but this short face-off was enough for Gongsun Cha to pay close attention to this unfamiliar battle formation. The Twinkling Brilliance battle formation was really exceptional. It actually was the skeleton of a battle formation that gave enough room for battle generals to react to many situations as required. Ming Lai was very skilled in using the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation. This was his best battle formation, and his wariness of Gongsun Cha could be seen from this course of action. But even though he was wary, Gongsun Cha did not panic. He widened his eyes. The battle formation stirred his interest. A very powerful formation. 7 sword xiu to a groups that then interlocked. There were all kinds of illusory formations that had been carefully arranged. All of the xiu in each group tightly grasped their flying swords, waiting. But what shocked Gongsun Cha was not this profound battle formation, but the talismans that this group of people wore. The entire battle formation was shrouded in the light of the talismans. Seeing this, Gongsun Cha's eyes became red. Compared to their enemies, they were just street beggars. Each of the sword xiu had 1 or 2 4th-grade talismans, all the flying swords they had were also 4th grade. Each of those jindan could be described as being bathed in the light of treasures, and it was blinding. Even more exaggerated was that the entire battle formation was covered in a layer of faint blue light. The enemy even had large-scale battle formation talismans. When compared to his side, the talismans they had were mostly 3rd grade. The number of 4th grade talismans could be counted on his fingers. The only thing that comforted them were the flying swords on their hands. They were all gold crystal flying swords that Zhuamo had forged in the golden crystal sand sea for everyone. But there were more than 2,000 people in Vermilion Bird Camp. No matter how powerful Zhuamo's Great Day Banded Flame was, it was a vast amount of work to forge more than 2,000 flying swords. In order to save time, he had created a mass forging method that could forge 20 gold crystal flying swords in one go. But the gold crystal flying swords created through this method were lacking compared to the ones he had forged at the start. Low 5th grade, and each possessed 2 very practical formation techniques, sharpness, and air sweep. Sharpness increased the sharpness of the flying sword, and air sweep greatly increased the speed of the flying sword. After great efforts, the Xiuzhi of Vermilion Bird Camp had basically all comprehended sword essence. These 2 formation techniques could be used to their full power in their hands. Compared to the flying swords on their hands, the talismans on their bodies were really poor. No wonder Gongsun Cha's eyes turned red when he saw the light of the 4th grade talismans on the enemy sword xiu. Zhuamo was greedy and money-hungry. His style of disliking individuals with good talismans had deeply influenced everyone else. Without any additional motivation, the entire Vermilion Bird Camp seemed to be full of adrenaline, all of them excited as they greedily rubbed their hands, their faintly red eyes sweeping to and fro on talisman-decorated bodies of the enemy sword xiu. Darren, let him go to test the waters. Lei Peng widened his eyes and rumbled with an innocent face. The laziness on Ma Fan's face instantly disappeared. He spat out the grass stem in his mouth and silently raised a thumb up at Lei Peng. Hearing this, like magic, a mirror had appeared on Nian Lu's hand and he was combing his bangs in the mirror. The other sword shio of Sky Peak platoon raised their chests and tried to seem very authoritative and brave. Sly. Someone got there first again. The other divisions looked with unfriendliness at this group. Many people had vexed expressions. That Lei Peng looked like an idiot, but how come he could act so quickly? Gong Sun Cha thought and then nodded in consent. Stay safe. It was the first time he saw the battle formation. Letting Ma Fan and the others go to test the waters would allow him to see this formation clearly. Ma Fan and the others were overjoyed. No matter what, they had gotten the accomplishment of the first strike. Even the usually complacent Ma Fan was excited, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Brothers, we need to show these brats the power of our Sky Peak platoon." Everyone in Sky Peak platoon was eager to fight. Ever since more and more people comprehended sword essence, the status of Sky Peak platoon became more and more awkward. They also needed a victory to bolster the status of Sky Peak platoon as the elite of Vermilion Bird Camp. As all the members of Sky Peak platoon assembled, everyone's gazes landed on them. Liang Wei did not speak, and the feeling of strangeness increased. When he saw a little team exit the black ship sword show, he was finally sure that the black ship battle general did not know the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation. A battle general who did not recognize the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation? This absurd conclusion was impossible to him, especially when he considered the spectacular command from earlier. The feeling of absurdity rose. No way, they don't even recognize the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation, a subordinate exclaimed. Maybe they have unorthodox training, another subordinate spoke uncertainly. Liang Wei paused to consider this and felt that it was plausible. Unorthodox battle generals were not uncommon. In truth, not every Yao could attend a Yao art house, and not every Yao art house had the ability to educate a battle general. Only the Yao art houses with great power had the ability to nurture battle generals. Learning to be a battle general was a long process compared to learning Yao arts. It was much harder to find the job, other than joining the military. Due to this, the Yao who learned to be battle generals mostly came from rich families. According to what Liang Wei knew, this situation wasn't just unique to the Yao, Xiuzhe, and Mo had the same problem. Unorthodox battle generals would occasionally have spectacular attacking abilities, but compared to educated orthodox battle generals, there was great differences in terms of their control and ability to assess a battle. He had thought that it was a Yao battle general inside the boat because the other's battle had the flavor of Yao, but now he wasn't so sure. He also felt anticipation. Unorthodox battle generals were full of unpredictability. This kind of unpredictability would usually cause them to be defeated, but this unpredictability would also create headaches for their opponents. No one was willing to meet an opponent that did not act rationally. Sky Peak platoon charged into the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation. The Twinkling Brilliance battle formation was a variant of the Northern Dipper battle formation. The entire battle formation was divided into 7 intersecting areas. However, while other variations of the Northern Dipper battle formation used the heavenly pivot star as the center of the formation, the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation was creative in using the 7th star, the Twinkling Brilliance star as the center of the formation. There was a long history of sword shio using the Northern Dipper 7-star formation in techniques. From the beginning sword scriptures, to the 7-person formations, to mountain guarding formations, then to large-scale battle formations, its structure could be found throughout the entire history of sword shio development. There were reasons that sword shio preferred the 7-star formation. The sword essence gathered through a 7-star formation was very good, and it was multi-purpose as it could be used for both offense and defense. However, Ma Fan truly lived up to being the former core under Lil, Mississippi. His tactical abilities were several levels above normal sword skill. The position he chose to attack was very special. The Northern Dipper 7-star formation was shaped like a spoon, and the place Ma Fan attacked was the place where the spoon and the handle joined, the celestial balance. Entering the attack range of the other's battle formation, everyone felt their surroundings changes. It was as though they suddenly entered a patch of grassland. Under their feet was a green carpet of grass that spread out endlessly. A curving great river was like a belt of jade that slowly flowed. A gentle wind blew past. The smell of green grass that Ma Fan liked the most entered his nose. An illusory formation. Without needing his orders, the two sword shio behind him shouted at the same time, two golden energies flew out of their hands and burrowing into the ground. Boom-oam-oam. The illusion of the grassland instantly shattered. Sword shio mostly were generally not skilled in illusory formations. The enemy had cast the illusory formation by relying on the talismans they were carrying. How could they stand up to the attack of 5th-grade flying swords? The illusion broke, and the surroundings returned to normal. But 7 sword energies had already reached them. The other hadn't expected the illusory formation would trap them, it was a distraction. The attack that followed was the true killing move. Follow behind me. Ma Fan shouted a reminder. His movements were fast, his flying sword lightly swinging and a transparent and irregular sword energy charged at the incoming sword energies like ripples of water. This was a new sword move created from merging his illusory shadowless sword of destruction into clear sky sword scripture. When this move was combined with his 3rd stage sword cultivation, its power was explosive. The other members followed closely behind him, the flying swords in their hands unmoving as though they did not see the incoming sword energies. The ripple and the incoming sword energies of various colors crashed together without any finesse. Pew pew pew. When the sword energies hit the ripple, it was like a handful of pebbles landing in water and created many ripples. The water ripples and the sword energies were like 2 bubbles that hit each other, canceling each other out. They disappeared at the same time. The faces of the sword shio on the other side changed slightly, their pupils contracting. Sword essence manifestation. An elite. Chapter 436, The Unforeseen Consequences of Lei Peng's Blow. The first level of sword essence, preliminary comprehension of sword essence, second level of sword essence, heart-turn sword essence, third level of sword essence manifestation. Comprehending sword essence for a sword shio meant they had talent and potential above others. When Wei Sheng had stepped into the second level when he was in Ningmai, he had shocked many. Comprehending sword essence was not as rare and attention-catching in other regions as it was in Sky Moon Jia. Large sects had numerous methods to allow their disciples to comprehend sword essence. For example, the sword cauldron, at its core use was similar to Zhuo Mo's 5-element sword formation. However, comprehending sword essence was just the first step through the door, and the path onwards was not a smooth one. A disciple that comprehended the 3rd level of sword essence in Ningmai would not be ignored, even those large sects that were full of geniuses. The first 2 levels did not increase the power of sword moves greatly. The second level, heart-turn sword essence, was also extremely unstable. But when sword essence reached the 3rd level, and it could manifest, the power of each sword move would skyrocket. So when the other side saw Ma Fan's sword essence manifestation, many were very shocked. Of course, they were just shocked, but no one was afraid. They were a battalion that were from Kunlun. Geniuses were not rare in Kunlun. While disciples that comprehended the 3rd level of sword essence in Ningmai did not fill the streets, they were not preciously rare. Even though subordinate sects had many. On top of that, they had finished forming their formation. This filled them with confidence towards the oncoming assault. Almost all battle formations had a similar attribute. That was once their assault started, it would be relentless, one wave after the other. Seeing Ma Fan stop the 7 sword energies, the battle formation changed again. 7 people to each troop forming a small 7-star formation. 7 troops to a team, forming a large 7-star formation. The one who was leading the Twinkling Brilliance team was a Jindan sword Xiu, He Jian. He was in charge of this 7-star formation made up of 49 people. When he saw the other's sword move, he too had been slightly shocked. The other's sword essence level was even one above his own. But he did not feel nervousness. At a glance, he saw that the cultivations of this group of people were all Ningmai. The gap between Ningmai and Jindan was deep. Even if the other had one whose sword essence was one level above his, they were not a match for him. A fierce smile floated upon He Jian's lips. Who cares what genius that was, by his hands, someone like that would only die. He opened his mouth and spat out a blue sword pill. The sword pill was just the size of a rice grain, but it grew when it came into contact with the air. After flying for 10 zhang, it had expanded to more than 3 zhang wide. Pulling along a long blue tail of light, it was like an enormous, blue axe that howled as it charged at Ma Fan's group. The howling was like sobbing wails, shocking people's souls. The other 48 sword Xiu saw their head attack and showed smiles of relief. During all their time together, they had never seen a sword Xiu below Jindan escape head's attack. The fight was going to end. He Jian's sword energy came extremely quickly and grew bigger. When it came near Ma Fan and the others, the sword energy was almost enough to cover all of them. The sword essence was sharp and intimidating, pressing straight at their heads and making them feel it was unstoppable. A Jindan's attack had an extraordinary presence. On the black turtle, Xia Shan looked at the smile the sword Xiu were showing. He twisted his mouth. Pitiful Ma Fan, he is being underestimated again. So pitiful, pitiful. That Ma Fan is laughing inside, if he's able, he'll put on a sheepskin, this guy is black on the inside. The crowd discussed heatedly. Ma Fan looked at the incoming sword energy. His eyes unconsciously narrowed as his figure suddenly flashed to the side. Half a body length behind him was Lei Peng. His eyes glaring angrily, he raised the gold crystal broadsword. His legs bent slightly at the knee in the sky as though there was invisible ground beneath the feet. All the muscles in his body expanded, the Ling power gathered like a burning flame and erupting from his body. But all of this was silent as though he was a statue. It made everyone feel an extreme contrast. Lei Peng was covering the raging sword energy with a suppressing silence. The enormous sword energy that came with a long dazzling tail tore at the air, rumbling like thunder. Extreme movement against extreme stillness, roaring thunder against deathly silence. At this moment, the two conflicted natures formed a frightening scene. Lei Peng seemed to return that battle, the moment right before the three of them had fainted. All the Ling power in his body was like burning flames that burned every strand of his nerves in this soundless silence. The blurry scene, the distant voice, the unwilling roar. The chaos flashed through his mind like a tide. The rough sword hilt he was tightly grasping gave him a thread of security, a thread of clarity. Something seemed to flow through his mind. This single thread of clarity was lightly plucked like an invisible cord. Without any hesitation, the Ling power flooded into the sword hilt by traveling through his arms and then palms. The raised broadsword moved in a single motion, swinging up and then down in the air. The restlessness disappeared, the howling disappeared, all sound seemed to disappear in this instant. A silent blow. Far away, He Jian's expression changed dramatically. Terror showed in his eyes. Before he could react, the other's broadsword struck his flying sword. Zzzt. The sound was like a cloth being torn and scratched through the air in an unusually clear manner. The enormous blue curtain of light was cleaved by this blow. He Jian grunted, his face pale, and his eyes shocked. He was injured. He didn't believe it, he had actually been injured. And injured by a Ningmai. His flying sword was destroyed. The other's blow that brutally cleaved his flying sword into two. For any sword xiu, their flying sword was connected with their life. If the flying sword was damaged, the sword xiu would also be heavily wounded. It was the first time he had been so heavily wounded. What was so hard for him to accept was that the other was a Ningmai sword xiu. How was this possible? His gaze was unfocused and his expression blank. Ma Fan and the others were also shocked by Lei Peng's blow. One move heavily injuring a Jindan sword xiu, such an absurd event had truly happened right in front of them. But when they noticed that Lei Peng was maintaining his attacking posture motionlessly like a statue, all of their expressions changed. Damn it! This guy was having an epiphany at this time. Ma Fan groaned inside. This was the battlefield. An epiphany was a rare chance for a breakthrough and would occur randomly. No one knew what could consistently initiate epiphanies, but everyone knew that epiphanies were chances for a breakthrough. Yet if the state of epiphany was disturbed, that was undoubtedly wasting a great opportunity. No one knew when the next epiphany would be activated. But Ma Fan reacted quickly. He advanced rather than retreating, shouting, "Kill!" At this time, the other side's expert was heavily wounded, and their formation was at its weakest. In a conflict of dozens of people, one Jindan Shouja could be the decisive factor in the fight. If they shrank back at this time, it would give the other time to react. This was the other's territory. If the enemy reacted under such conditions, then they, Ma Fan's side, would be in danger. Attack in substitute of defense was the wiser choice. As to the rest, they would have to rely on Gongsun Darren. The inexperience of Ming Lai Battalion was given full exposure at this time. These sword xiu that had assumed that victory was in their grasp and hadn't thought that the situation would suddenly reverse. This caused them to be 2 whole beats late in reacting, only then did they muster a panicky response. On the battlefield, especially fights in such a small area, 2 beats slower was enough to be fatal. Compared to the other side's panic, the Sky Peak platoon with Ma Fan at the lead didn't hesitate and used their full power in their first attack. The sword energies were like a sun that rose, unable to be looked at directly. 3-section wave killing charge. They were like a burning blade that sliced through butter. 15 sword xiu were killed upon contact. The Ling armor on their bodies only gave them a brief respite before their armor cracked like eggshells. The sharpness, formation technique on the gold crystal sword was used to great effect at this time. The 15 sword xiu didn't even have the time to wail before they were perforated, and lost their life. Succeeding in the first attack, Ma Fan and the others didn't hesitate and launched the second wave. Only now did the enemy sword xiu seem to wake up and raise their swords to resist in panic. Ma Fan looked at these slow opponents as though he was looking at a crowd of sheep waiting for slaughter. He did not show mercy. How could the panicking sword xiu be a match for Ma Fan and the others? Among the crisscrossing sword energies, blossoms of blood sprayed. The fragility of life showed itself. In a blink, another 10 sword xiu lost their lives. In just 2 waves of attack, more than half of the others' division had been lost. All of Ming Lai Battalion was shocked by such a ferocious attack. The pride in their hearts disappeared without a trace in front of those cold and bright sword energies. Ming Lai's expression also changed. The capabilities of this little troop of Ningmai surpassed his imagination. He didn't know what those gold flying swords were made up of, but were at least 5th grade. What shocked him the most was that every person in this little troop had at least comprehended the 2nd level of sword essence. There were even several in the 3rd level. Truly elite. Coldness flashed through his eyes. He did not feel fury at the fatalities of He Jian's little team. For any battle general, it was a basic skill to maintain calm in the face of fatalities. At the same time, he noticed the motionless Lei Peng. An epiphany? A dark smile floated to the corner of his mouth. A Ningmai sword xiu that heavily wounded a Jindan with 1 blow and activated an epiphany. There probably wouldn't be a battle general that would be willing to give up this kind of subordinate. Ming Lai admired that team leader's response. But how could he not take advantage of such a good opportunity? The strength of this little group of elite astonished him greatly, but he believed that this kind of elite skill couldn't be the level of the entire troop. He was considering if he could capture these elite people alive and persuade them to follow him. Calming down, Ming Lai quickly threw these absurd thoughts to the back of his head. What was most important now was to achieve victory. The battle formation quickly changed and pushed towards Lei Peng's position. Inside the black turtle, Gong Sun Cha lightly laughed. This guy's luck is pretty good. As he finished, his expression suddenly became cold. He said peacefully, "Attack." The battlefield was full of unpredictable factors. No one had expected Lei Peng's sudden epiphany. This caused the two sides to directly enter battle without sufficient probing. Chapter 437, Zhuo Mo's sneak attack. All of guard camp was gathered and nervously waiting for orders. Returning to the camp, Awen released a long breath. He finally didn't have to be tormented under Darren's hands. The mood of guard camp wasn't too nervous. Everyone was battle-hardened and naturally wouldn't be nervous at the thought of battle. Adding on that guard camp were basically show slaves, they didn't have any idea regarding things like Kunlun. In their eyes, there was only the enemy. They all knew that Vermilion Bird Camp had not yet gone all out. Their mood relaxed. Guard camp saw Zhuo Mo charge in. Everyone hurried to bow. "How's the battle going?" Zhuo Mo asked, pretending to be concerned. He wasn't worried at all. With a battle maniac like Gongsun Shidi in charge, there was no need for him to worry. Other people did not know about it, but he knew it well. Even an experienced golden battle general like Yu Heng had fallen under Gongsun Shidi's butchering blade. He didn't believe a young one could defeat Lil Miss. Of course, he completely forgot that Lil Miss was a shy little young one as well. Xu Long said respectfully, "It has just begun, but Lei Peng has wounded one of the Jindan on the other side." Lei Peng wounded a Jindan. Zhuo Mo jumped at this news. He didn't quite believe it. This guy is that fierce? Yes. Xu Long also had an admiring expression. To be able to heavily injure a Jindan with only Ningmai cultivation, from every angle, this was enough to shock anyone. Did he eat some drug? Zhuo Mo said to himself. He then moved his gaze to the battlefield. When he saw the motionless Lei Peng, he was shocked again. Epiphany? It's actually an epiphany. This guy's luck is outrageous. It was no wonder that Zhuo Mo felt admiration. An epiphany was a matter of chance, there were no patterns to evoke one. Xu Long and the others besides Zhuo Mo had sympathetic expressions. Lei Peng was a large fellow, looked outgoing and loud, but he was really cunning. There were many that had tripped up on him. Who would think that such a cunning and loudmouthed bandit was able to have an epiphany at this time? This was unexpected to everyone. Zhuo Mo smacked his lips and drew away his gaze. With that glance, he already recognized Lil Miss Snowflake battle formation. He had a deep impression of this battle formation that tripped up Yu Heng. The last thread of worry in his heart dissipated. Lil Miss was probably going to end the fight soon. They had to move quickly. Otherwise, they wouldn't even get a slice of the pie. Zhuo Mo pondered inside. He was planning on trying out the power of the Xiao Mo Gu battle method that he had just discovered. When he noticed that Gong Sun Cha's snowflake battle formation had already started to press onto the enemy, he became even more rushed. Having seen the power of the snowflake battle formation before, Zhuo Mo never thought that the Kunlun sword Xiu could ever win. Reality proved that encountering Gongsun Shidi was a very unfortunate matter. The battle quickly entered a high point. Everyone moved decisively. The position that Lei Peng was at quickly became the center area of the entire battle. Ming Lai's twinkling brilliance formation pressed toward there, and Vermilion Bird Camp's goal was also in this narrow area. A ferocious collision. Moments later, Ming Lai's expression became slightly ugly. He had originally assumed that the other would become restrained in their actions due to the sword Xiao that was having an epiphany. But the other didn't have any care at all, and had made that location into their breakthrough point. That little elite troop was furiously sweeping through that area. Like layers of blades, they continuously charged. 3-section stab. 3-section stab again. The power of the other's 3-section stab was enormous, especially in this situation where his other little teams could not come to help. The sword Xiao in that area had been mostly cleaned up. What angered him even more was that the wounded He Jian was like an alarmed bird that panicked and retreated without any fighting spirit, giving up the space to the other. The enemy seemed to have torn a hole in the twinkling brilliance formation. Sword Xiao continuously flooded in from that gap. A useless idiot. Ming Lai had always dreamed of constructing a steely battalion. He Jian's poor performance was like slapping him on the face. Losing wasn't anything, being wounded wasn't anything, but losing courage and forgetting his duties was, in his eyes, a failure. "I'll sort you out once we get back," Ming Lai thought inside as he gritted his teeth. His expression was dark as his orders streamed out. Celestial balance was still going at full power. The complex and chaotic battlefield continued to change in his mind. His brow quickly furrowed. Such a strange battle formation. He had already made preparations to deal with the other's 3-section stab. The other's 3-section stab was used uncannily, and peerlessly sharp. In reality, this was the most powerful 3-section stab he had ever seen. It seemed that this should be the other's trademark tactic, but what he hadn't expected was that the other did not use the 3-section stab but shifted to a kind of weird battle formation. 6 of their people to a little group like a snowflake that spun at high speed as they advanced. Several battle formations flashed through Ming Lai's mind, but he quickly eliminated all of them. It was clear that this strange battle formation was not any battle formation he knew of. His brows suddenly creased as he had a strange feeling. This kind of battle formation seemed slightly like a Yao battle formation. His eyes lit up, and he suddenly realized why he felt it so strange. Yes. It was because this slightly strange snowflake battle formation clearly had the style of Yao battle formations. Yao, Mo, and Xiuzhe, the 3 major camps had clear differences in their battle methods, so the battle formations they used were also completely different. Xiuzhe were skilled in seal formations, so most of their battle formations had this at their core. This caused them to pay great attention to the structure of battle formations. Even such a flexible formation like the Twinkling Brilliance formation had a very stable main skeleton. Yao battle generals had extremely strong consciousnesses, and their control of troops was the strongest. Due to this, their battle formations did not care about battle formation structure and were more relaxed. For example, the 3-section wave killing charge was able to attack in any direction, while the snowflake battle formation was like a flowing flood of snowflakes. On this point, Mo battle generals and Yao battle generals were in common, but compared to the Yao, Mo were even more straightforward. For example, the Crow Fiend Mo killing formation only had the little Mo kill, successive Mo kill and great Mo kill as transformations. When Ming Lai detected the other's strangeness, he was alarmed. From the start, he had been suppressed. Every judgment he had made was different than reality. What did this mean? This meant that he had unconsciously allowed the other to take the advantage. From a certain perspective, it showed the difference in skill between him and the other. He suddenly felt a thread of alarm. Pay attention to troop form. Keep up. Keep up. Do not linger in battle with the enemy, notice your position. The platoon leaders shouted at the top of their lungs. The Ling power in their bodies were channeled to the limit, their faces red and necks thick. They had trained with the snowflake battle formation before, but had never used it in real combat, so there naturally were places that were not in sync. Everyone's nerves were tense. This was the battlefield. The mistake in any detail meant that there was the possibility of losing their life. The area with the fiercest combat was the position of Sky Peak Platoon. They had already left Lei Peng's position, and penetrated deeply into the other's battle formation like a drill. In this area, the sword Xiu on both sides mingled. The sword energies crossed in the air and rained down. Among the blinding sword energies, people would occasionally be hit and fall down from the sky. In this kind of situation, if they were hit by a flying sword, they definitely could not survive. Even if they had the protection of Ling armor, momentary pause would attract many sword energies. Under this kind of assault, 4th grade Ling armor was like papier-mâché, being pulverized to dust in an instant. When the Jindan sword Xiu responsible for this area took a look, he was furious. All the fatalities were people on their side. Up until now, they hadn't managed to kill a single person from the enemy's side. This Jindan sword Xiu felt his face was burning. He unhesitatingly shouted, "Twinkling Brilliance Revolution." The formation shape of the little team changed. Everyone cast 3 sword energies towards the air. The densely packed sword energies froze above their heads, the tips pointing at Ma Fan and the others. Hundreds of sword energies floated in the sky, murderous intent swarmed Ma Fan and the others. The Jindan sword Xiu's gaze hardened. He threw a round silver ball into the air and pointed at Ma Fan, shouting, "Fall." Hiss. The silver ball flew into the sky, exploded and turning to electric snakes that swam between the sword energies. In a blink, a web of lightning had formed. Following the exclamation of "Fall" from the Jindan sword Xiu, the lightning net with the hundreds of sword energies fell down. The moment the Jindan sword Xiu shouted, "Twinkling Brilliance Revolution," Ma Fan had detected danger and his body abruptly retreated. But this sword energy lightning net was like a black cloud that came extremely quickly. Before they could escape, the sword energy lightning net had reached above their heads like a mountain. Killing intent and coldness caused the hairs on Ma Fan's body to stand up. His eyes suddenly turned red. Without thinking, the Ling power inside his body was like a stallion off his reins that furiously flooded towards the gold crystal sword in his hand. A light blue rippling sword energy that was the color of the sky appeared on the gold crystal sword. It was made from many layers and looked like creased blue glass. Once the sword energy left the flying sword, it disappeared into the air without a trace. Behind him, dozens of lotus flowers rose. There was a hum, it was the sound of the sword. The lotus flowers suddenly exploded mid-air in unison, countless lotus flower petals shooting into the sky. Nian Lu's face was upraised, coldness flashing through his eyes as he disregarded the blood flowing out of the corner of his mouth. The other Sky Peak Platoon sword Xiu knew that this was the time to go all out. Everyone released their killing moves without communicating. Boom! The silver light above their heads fell down, the light was so blinding they almost couldn't keep their eyes open. Amongst the silver light came Ma Fan's shout. "Retreat!" When the light dissipated, the figures of Ma Fan and the others had disappeared. That Jindan sword Xiu showed shock in his eyes. His hair had been blown astray, falling all around him, and he was very disheveled. All of his subordinate sword Xiu had a line of blood coming from the corner of their mouths. On that pale face, that pair of eyes was possessed by terror. The hardiness and viciousness of Sky Peak Platoon rattled these greenhorns that just stepped onto the battlefield. Just a few dozen people had firmly controlled almost 200 people. Their side had turned into a mess. What they couldn't believe was that the other side had safely escaped. They had not killed even one of the enemy. Even when their Jindan sword Xiu attacked and used the power of the battle formation, they hadn't managed to get one person. They had always thought they were elite. Darren had continuously told them that they were elite. They had believed in this. They were able to join a battalion that belonged to Kunlun, this meant that they were exceptional. But the cruel reality was clearly put in front of them. Ma Fan and the others gathered the last vestiges of strength. Taking advantage of the others' slow reaction, they quickly left behind the area of battle. They had no more strength to fight. The rest is up to you. Ma Fan's voice was hoarse. He looked extremely terrible, his hair a mess, wounds all over his body, and his gaze was dim. The sword Xiu that welcomed him did not say anything and bowed respectfully towards them. Chapter 437, Zhuomo's Sneak Attack Part 2. When the figures of Ma Fan and his platoon disappeared behind the troop, every Vermilion Bird Camp sword Xiu's expressions became stern. Attack! Gong Sun Cha's order came into everyone's minds through his consciousness. The gold crystal swords in the hands of the sword Xiu at the very front of each snowflake created a sword energy. At the same time, they moved towards the side. His teammate that was on his right rotated into position and also released a sword energy at the same time. The stream of sword energies gathered into a ruler straight line. On this line of light, each sword energy hit the same position. Pia pia pia. The ruler straight sword energy line instantly plowed deep bloody marks on the other's battle formation. Hundreds of sword energy lines lit up. In a breath, hundreds of bloody pits appeared on the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation. With this one attack, the Twinkling Brilliance battle formation had been turned into a sieve. Liang Wei looked at the battlefield with a confused gaze. He had originally thought this would be a fierce battle, and had not expected the battle to be so one-sided. His time in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia was not short. This battalion from Kunlun was not weak in its composition and could be said to be above average. If it was him, he would not be afraid, but he did not dare to guarantee he could heavily wound the other. Even though he had caused many fatalities in the previous ambush, but that kind of chance wouldn't frequently occur. But this black ship of mysterious origins did not seem to be using much effort. He had speculated that this was a battle general from unorthodox origins. The astounding level of control he showed was like the corps commanders of those large corps. When he saw the sword energy lines, he suddenly realized that this was a completely new battle formation. The other showed the style of a Yao battle general everywhere in his actions, but he commanded a group of sword Xiu. He could not comprehend this. And the individual strength of these sword Xiu were also a great surprise to him. He had not seen any of the others' Jindan sword Xiu, but just this group of Ningmai sword Xiu beat the other so thoroughly that the enemy couldn't even raise their head. Other than the battle formation, there was another crucial factor, sword essence. Almost every one of the black ship sword Xiu had comprehended sword essence. When Liang Wei discovered this, he almost went insane. There hadn't been any major battles in the time he had returned to Blood Sky Metropolis Jia, but he had more than 30 scattered conflicts. He had encountered many sword Xiu that comprehended sword essence. But it was the first time he had encountered a troop that was completely composed of sword Xiu that comprehended sword essence. This wasn't a dozen, or a few hundred, but a few thousand. Liang Wei suddenly felt it was absurd. Maybe, this black ship was actually the people from Kunlun. His surroundings were entirely silent. Everyone was shocked by the combat capabilities the black ship showed. Looking from a distance at this troop, Liang Wei found to his shock that he could not muster up any thought of making an ambush. In this moment, he was very emotional. When the difference in strength between two sides was too great, one would lose the bravery to ambush the enemy. When could he also possess a troop like this? That would be wonderful. At this time, his eye jumped and his attention couldn't help but land on the black ship at the back of the battlefield. A troop of 100 silently flew out of the black ship. Something was going on. Careful, don't let the enemy find us, Zhuo Mo whispered. The procession behind him that was sneaking nodded to show their understanding. Like robbers, they tiptoed. Zhuo Mo's plan of going out to fight had been met with strong resistance from Xu Long. The stern Xu Long stubbornly thought that it would be unpardonable if Darren went and met danger. Naturally, Zhuo Mo did not agree. He raised an eyebrow and asked Xu Long, "Which of you is stronger than Ge?" Everyone was left speechless. In terms of individual power, everyone's first choice would be Wei Sheng but second would be Zhuo Mo. His great Damo physique that had went through its second maturation, so Zhuo Mo's combat capabilities far surpassed normal Jin Dan. He was also skilled in a variety of tricks. Even if he was facing Wei Sheng wouldn't dare to easily say he could win. Helplessly, Xu Long could only pick the 100 of the most elite hardship guards from guard camp. He had his responsibilities and could not mess around with Zhuo Mo. To these 100 hardship guards, it was the first time they were directly under Darren's command and fighting together with Darren. The morale was very high. But with Zhuo Mo's deviousness, he definitely wouldn't do something like a frontal charge. Even if Vermilion Bird Camp had the advantage, even if he had the elite of guard camp with him, he still decided to make an sneak attack. Most of guard camp were heavy armor hardship guards because the armor they formed were heavily weighted armor. Each of them were very strong, and each of their weapons was a door-sized cleaver 1 zhang long. After cultivating hardship guard, their figures had grown crazily. Each of them was very brawny and tall, 1 zhang being the average height. Lei Peng, who looked down on Vermilion Bird Camp in terms of physical power, was only a bean sprout when he was put among this group of fierce men. So when this group of brawny fierce men clumsily hunched their backs and tiptoed behind Zhuo Mo, it looked very humorous. The only one that looked normal was a one. He had cultivated to become a Mo shadow guard skilled in speed, and was the definite abnormality of guard camp. However, these fierce men that were immersed in the nervousness of sneaking about clearly did not detect how strange their actions were. Even though they tried to copy Zhuo Mo's movements, their physiques were truly too big, especially when 100 brawny men gathered together. It wasn't possible to avoid attention like this anywhere. They were quickly discovered. The first one that found them was Song Yuan. He was slightly nervous and had been looking around. He instantly found Zhuo Mo and the others. What is that? He hurriedly pulled Ming Lai beside him and pointed to another direction of the battle formation. His face turned black and red, the fire in Ming Lai reached the point of eruption. This was his most frustrating battle ever. Up until now, his results were pitiful. The other's weird battle formation was very powerful, and his tactics were unreasonable. They were like a mill that continuously pressed forward. No matter what response he gave, the other would disregard it, pressing forward, forward and forward again. The twinkling brilliance battle formation that he had relied on, to get to achieve his current status, and any tactic that he could think of could not stop the other for even an instant. There was no thrusting, no outflanking, no other tactics. These sword Xiu seemed to be insane, releasing sword energies without exhaustion. Those ruler straight sword energy lines almost caused him to go insane. Twinkling brilliance revolution, countered with 2 sword energy lines. Twinkling brilliance sword, countered with 5 sword energy lines. Twinkling brilliance Qilin sword, countered with 10 sword energy lines. It was like a great swordsman that flourished his sword to tempt the enemy. The other didn't pay any heed and responded by slamming down a brick, a feinting maneuver. The other didn't look, another brick, a killing move. The other didn't even look, and threw over a whole pile of bricks. But he couldn't do anything against such a crude way of fighting. He really had no solutions. He tried everything he could think of, but no matter what changes he made, they collapsed against the other's crude and brutal sword energy lines. Looking as his battalion was slowly swallowed up and being unable to do anything, the blow to his confidence was fatal. He was confused like a gambler that had lost all he had. Weakness, anger, hopelessness. Mixed together, it pushed him to the precipice of collapse. At this moment, he saw Zhuo Mo's group. Something in his mind seemed to explode. The last thread of intelligence was turned to dust by the erupting rage. At this time, you still make a sneak attack. You forced me to such a state, you still use a sneak attack. You do a sneak attack, and use this crowd of big blockheads in the sneak attack. You. The pitiful Ming Lai's eyes were completely red, his expression fierce. His pride that accumulated over 20 years was stepped on repeatedly by hundreds of pairs of muddy feet. All the fury, all the hopelessness erupted and formed one word. Kill. Suemo hadn't thought that they would be discovered. He was slightly disappointed by the failure of his plan. But his eyes quickly lit up. The excited person in the middle of the enemy that was charging over seemed to be the leader of this group. The leader of the other group. Oarf. Suemo's eyes shot out light. He seemed to have found the fattest lamb among a crowd of lambs. The temptation of lambs caused him to become excited. The Xiaomogu battle method was thrown away. He waved his arm and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Brothers, there's fat sheep." The fierce men all straightened their spines, their eyes alight. Green lights lit up in the eye sockets of the heavy armor helmets. Those gazes were so ravenous, so greedy. Chapter 438, Victory. Suemo's raised arm was like a lighthouse's guiding light, showing the way in the dark of the night. His loud shout was a horn that lit the deepest desires of these fierce men. Heavenly thunder and earthly fire. Spines straightened, the fierce men breathed heavily through their nose, dragging along their door-sized axes and cleavers as they threw their shoulders back and started a paced sprint. The little scales on the heavy armor rattled as they ran, but as these fierce men's charge gained speed, the sound changed. Sielong, Sielong. Each sound was like a steel rhinoceros's heavy stomp on the ground and caused people's hearts to shake. When the sound of the armor impacts became packed together, the thunderous sounds quickly gathered into a metallic flood. When it spread out, the presence was unable to be resisted. Boom-oom-oom. The ground under their feet trembled fiercely. Little pebbles were thrown into the air as though there was an earthquake. Having just charged 5 zhang, Minglai forcibly stopped his body. His face was ashen as he looked in terror at the wave of heavy armor that was charging at him as his lips trembled. Heavy armor. It was motherfucking heavy armor. Minglai's limbs were cold, his legs weak as he had an expression like he was both crying and smiling at the same time. Heavy armor. This kind of antique, that was so old and had disappeared for so many years, actually appeared in front of him. And he was actually ambushed by such washed-out and ancient soldier types. In the legends, weren't those heavy armor who wore Diana Xiao, true brave souls that did not fear death? Didn't those same legends also say that those were forever the strongest power to meet face to face? Didn't they say that those were the ones that only attacked head-on to destroy the resolve of the enemy? Didn't they say that those were people who disdained using any scheme or trickery and the use of battle formations? But then why were these large men that had hunched their backs, while tiptoeing around in wearing heavy armor and had glowing blood-thirsty eyes? Minglai was dazed. In this instant, Suemo led the fierce men and suddenly charged in front of them. From the beginning, Suemo's gaze had not left the other's leader. That was his prey. Without another word, following the flow of the charge, the light void wings burst in his wake, and he charged at Minglai. At Minglai's side, Song Yuan paled. He drew the pine script sword out of its sheath. A round sword energy appeared in front of them. Suemo's momentum was so powerful he was like a meteor. The round sword energy was shattered. Among the scattered shards of energy, a rapid figure leapt at the two people. Song Yuan really did have skills. He already knew his round sword energy could not stop Suemo. The seemingly normal pine script sword in his hand seemed to come alive, drawing out a nimble mark. The sword essence swirled and coiled into a snake. Hiss. The snow-white snake spat out its tongue. Suemo saw this snow-white snake, and his pupils suddenly contracted. Sword essence manifestation. This seemingly alive and nimble snow-white snake caused Suemo to think about Xian Yen Shirshu's ice dragon. Compared to Xian Yen Shirshu's ice dragon, this snow snake was much smaller. It was just 3 or 4 zhang long and the thickness of his wrist. But its attitude and presence was the same as Shirsu's ice dragon. Expert. Almost unconsciously, the midday blade appeared in Zhuomo's hands, his arm reversed course swinging downwards and dealt it a blow. Cling. The sharp sound of impact caused Zhuomo's eardrums to hurt. Enormous force came from his hand, and his entire arm heated up. Without even thinking, Zhuomo stabbed the midday blade into the ground using it as a fulcrum point to stabilize himself, his body spinning around it like a top, his right leg like a whipped out as he kicked the chin of the snow snake. The snow snake froze. The strongest power from the golden crow feet, the heaviness of this kick was almost unimaginable. The merging of the three powers inside Zhuomo's body had given him many troubles, but also many benefits. After the three powers merged into one, when he used the great Daimo physique, his advanced body cultivation would pull along his consciousness and Ling power, enhancing the both of them. In this instant, his perceptual abilities were multiple times what it was in the past. Zhuomo instantly realized the benefit of this change. He unconsciously made adjustments to his golden crow feet. A golden foot shadow flashed on his right leg and disappeared. This kick hit the snow snake directly. Song Yuan's expression changed. The pine script sword in his hand drew another circle and a blinding light swam from the handle of the sword to the tip. The snow snake's eyes suddenly became bright, two dots of red light pointing at Zhuomo. Zhuomo had sunk into unspeakable pleasure with the success of that golden crow feet blow. Every part of his body seemed to instantly come to life. A feeling of having control over everything formed. This intoxicating feeling caused Zhuomo to want to roar into the sky. A feeling of danger suddenly formed. Zhuomo's body reacted with lightning speed. The light void wings lightly flapped and he disappeared into the air. Two dashes of red light flashed past his former position while, like a ghost, he appeared above and behind the snow snake's head. Something seemed to flash and almost spill out of his right palm. The right hand made an empty palm strike towards the head of the snake. A golden yellow Great Day script left his hand and imprinted on the head of the snow snake. The snow snake instantly showed a painful expression. Song Yuan's round face was covered with sweat. He didn't know when it had occurred, but the pine script sword in his hand was now filled with a spider web of cracks. His bean-sized eyes were filled with shock. Mo physique. This was a Mo physique. Ranking second among Colonel Mo physiques, the Great Day Mo physique. How was this possible? How could humans cultivate Mo physiques? Song Yuan seemed to have seen a ghost. In Kunlun, Yaomao were a topic that every Kunlun disciple had to study in depth. All of Kunlun understood that the conflict between Xiuzhe and Yaomao would never end unless one side disappeared. As the top sect of Xiuzhe, Kunlun was leading the charge. Due to this, Kunlun disciples understood much more about Yaomao than other sections. At first, Song Yuan had not even considered Mo physiques. The people in front of him were dislikable, but they were undoubtedly human. Humans were unable to cultivate Mo skills, this was common knowledge. But Zhuomo's fierce series of attacks, and especially the appearance of the Great Day script had caused him to realize what he had encountered. Ranking second among Colonel Mo physiques, the Great Day Mo physique. Only the Great Day Mo physique could be so fierce, so domineering. And the other hadn't just successfully cultivated into a Mo physique, it wasn't a Mo physique in first maturation, but in second maturation. This judgment almost completely uprooted everything he knew. Up until now the division between the three camps of Yao, Mo and Xiuzhe were clear. He had never heard of any human that had succeeded in getting a normal Mo physique, much less the Great Day Mo physique, which was rare and top even in the Mo world. This shocking discovery caused him to unconsciously glance at the large, heavily armored men behind Zhuomo. His pupils suddenly shrank. No. They weren't heavy armor Diana Xiu at all. They were heavy armor Mo kill guards. His face was suddenly robbed of all color. The difference between the heavy armor Diana Xiao and the heavy armor Mo Kill guards was the armor that they wore. The heavy armor of the Diana Xiao was a type of Ling armor, while the heavy armor of the heavy armor Mo Kill guards were condensed from killing energy. Heavy armor Mo Kill guards. A distant and obscure Mo soldier type, they were the cruelest machines of slaughter, the most vicious blades, the strongest heavy hammer in the hand of the Mo king. The heavy armor Mo Kill guards in front of him were slightly green, but they were still true heavy armor Mo Kill guards. Thinking about these heavy armor Mo Kill guards maturing and using their enormous weapons to create storms of blood, Song Yuan trembled. However, he did not have the time to divide his attention. Zhuo Mo's attacks were like a tide, one wave striking after the other. His faintly golden figure flickered around the snowy white snake. Song Yuan's mouth tasted bitter. The Great Day script on the forehead of the snow snake continuously corroded it. But he didn't have a solution. The reason that the Great Day Mo physique could rank second among Colonel Mo physique was because of its extreme hardness and yang affinity. There was no yin or corruption. This was very rare among Mo physiques. There were methods to subdue the Great Day Mo physique. The utmost yin and cold spells could do it. As the holy ground of Sword Xiu, of course Kunlun had these kinds of spells, and there were at least 3 sword scriptures and spells that fit these requirements. However, Song Yuan had not cultivated any one of those before. Unable to subdue it, he could only meet it directly to see if it was his sword that was sharpest, or the other's Mo physique that was more powerful. Ming Lai looked dazedly at his troops as they were quickly losing. This group of shameless people rampaged like lions that rushed into a herd of sheep. Their enormous weapons were truly fierce. The sword energies of his subordinates were as fragile as chopsticks in front of them. They furiously charged around in the battle formation. They were not fast, but when an enormous man 1 zhang tall and completely covered in heavy armor charged over, people could not muster up the courage to stand their ground. What made Ming Lai feel even more hopeless was that these blockheads never acted alone. They were acted 3 to 5 in a group. Even if they encountered a single sword Xiu, they would all charge up together. 5 or 6 axes and cleavers chopped and sliced together for a while. Ming Lai looked woodenly at all this. He knew it, he had lost. But why had he lost? He was still filled with confusion. Song Yuan tried to withstand Zhuo Mo's storm of attacks. But the last bit of hope inside slowly extinguished. The other's figure was covered in a layer of light gold, so it was impossible to see his features. The other became even more brave the more he fought. Song Yuan could clearly feel the pressure he was receiving increase. From a young age until now, he had never been suppressed like this by someone from start to finish. Was he going to die here today? A strong thread of terror rose up inside. He had never felt death was this close to him. Pia pia pia. Among a rapid string of collisions, the snow snake that had persisted finally reached its limits and crumbled into thousands of sword essence fragments that fluttered away. Whoosh! A spray of blood carrying the fragments of Ling armor suddenly flew forward. A palm covered in Great Day script passed through Song Yuan's chest. Song Yuan's pupils froze, the light slowly dissipating until all life had disappeared. With Song Yuan taken care of, Zhuo Mo did not hesitate and appeared next to the soulless Ming Lai. With a crisp blow, the other's life was ended. No one knew that this sudden battle directly messed up the rhythm and setup of the 3 sides. The meat grinder, that would astound future generations, debuted just like this without any warning. Chapter 439, Cloud Sijie. 3 months later. A nondescript, little black ship appeared at the entrance of the Cloud Sijie River. Everyone inside the black turtle squeezed in front of the mirage formation. Looking at the scenery outside, they were very excited. We've finally arrived. So this Cloud Sijie. It's so beautiful. Yes, it's the first time I've seen a place this beautiful. Under their feet was an endless sea of clouds. Floating among this sea of clouds were little islands. The cloud sea slowly floated, and the white cloud energy was faintly discernible like mist. Suddenly, a big, bright green bird shot out of the cloud sea, its wings stroked as it furiously flew into the sky and disappeared into the distance in a blink. Such fast speed! The people that saw this scene all inhaled sharply. The speed of this green bird was something who even the fastest one among them, could only gape at. The expressions of Xuemo and few others also changed slightly. They exchanged looks with each other and saw the gravity in each other's eyes. The green bird's grade was not low. In Sky Moon Jia, it would definitely be at the top of the food chain. If the grade of the Yao beast in an area were very high, it meant that there would not be a high population of Xiuzha in this area and that the area was not well explored. Yao beasts were not friendly to Xiuzha. Xiuzha liked to hunt Yao beasts, and Yao beasts were also showed a similar interest and fondness for Xiuzha. There aren't any people on these islands. Wei Xing stared at the island as they passed by. The island was not very large, about 50 mu. Because it was so close, the group could see it very clearly. There were ruins of buildings on the island which indicated that Xiuzha had once resided there. Thinking about the green bird that had darted by, everyone's expressions were not very good. Were the Ling beasts here left to roam free to such a degree? Everyone, be careful, Xuemo ordered. Everyone immediately focused and prepared their defenses. However, the reality proved they had worried needlessly. Other than that shockingly fast green bird, they did not encounter anything significant along the way. After the initial novelty passed, the endless cloud sea quickly became dull and boring in everyone's eyes. After more than a dozen days, just as everyone was feeling restless, an enormous island appeared in their vision. Everyone's morale rose, but no one had expected that they had to continue flying for 3 more days before they could be considered near to this island. They finally realized that the enormity of this island far surpassed their imagination. When they flew closer, this feeling increased. It was like a colossal sea turtle silently floating in the cloud sea. In front of it, the Xiuzha were insignificant like specks of dust. Approaching the large island, the number of fragmented little islands they could see increased. They were scattered randomly and in various sizes. Some were just dozens of zhang in diameter, while others were tens of thousands of mu in area. When Xuemo and the others flew close, a Xiuzha flew out from one of the little islands. This Xiuzha's face looked clever. He wore a cloth robe and crisply stopped 50 zhang from the black turtle. He made a bow and shouted loudly, "This one is Shang Wei Ming. Bosses, welcome to Dongxing Cloud Island. This one hopes your business is prosperous and flourishing. Do you require a guide? This one is a local, so if boss wants to know of something, sell or buy, this one might be able to offer some scarce effort." Shang Wei Ming's face was open without any shyness. Guide? Xuemo felt it was interesting. After thinking a while, he shouted his order, "Get Bao Yi to come." As he finished, he flew out of the black turtle first. Wei Xing was worried for Xuemo's safety and also flew out. The other people inside the ship were alert and guarded, to ensure they could respond the moment they encountered any danger. They had slaughtered their way out of bloody sky metropolis Jia and had formed the habit of being alert at any moment. Shang Wei Ming saw 2 people fly out of the ship. His expression was steady but he released a breath inside. It seemed that this business was possible. "This is Dongxing Cloud Sea?" Xuemo asked curiously. "Yes, this is Dongxing Cloud Sea." Shang Wei Ming bowed towards the 2. "What do I call both bosses?" "My name is Xuemo said with a smile. He pointed at Wei Xing and said, "He is Wei." "Good day, Boss Sua and Boss Wei." Shang Wei Ming raised his folded hands in salute and gave his greetings. He examined the 2 people. Seeing their attire was normal, he was slightly disappointed inside. The black ship behind them was very normal. Shang Wei-ming was increasingly sure that Sua Mo and the others were just small business merchants. However, while he felt disappointed inside, he did not allow it to show it on his face. No matter what, it was good that he had business today. Have you come to Dongxing Cloud Sea for business or to visit friends? Shang Wei-ming looked at Sua Mo and asked. He could see that Sua Mo was the decision-maker. At this time, Bao Yi hurried over. He bowed towards Sua Mo, boss, and then bowed towards Wei Sheng. Teacher Wei. Brother Bao is too courteous, Wei Sheng said humbly. Sua Mo wasn't polite. Old Bao, you came at the right time. You can deal with the business affairs. This Mr. Shang is our guide. You can deal with the fees and such. Bao Yi hurriedly said, yes. Shang Wei-ming's heart jumped. The decision-maker's clothing was normal, but his presence and tone of voice was definitely not of a small business merchant. He also smelt something familiar from this person who was as thin as bamboo. It was the smell of a merchant. What is the daily fee, Mr. Shang? Bao Yi raised his head, his eyes flashing with calculation. Shang Wei-ming focused. 5 third-grade jingshi per day. This price isn't high. Bao Yi nodded. He then slowly asked, what other services does Mr. Shang provide? Bao's attitude, presence, and calculation caused Shang Wei-ming to realize that the person in front of him was an old-timer. His confidence of his positive speculations increased. This group was surely here to do big business. The smile on Shang Wei-ming's face grew more friendly. Providing directions is the most basic service. If you need to find shelter and food, this one can find appropriate inns and restaurants for everyone. This one is a local merchant and has a small network. This one also knows the local goods. If there is a need for information, this one can also find it, but this will require some additional jingshi. Good. Bao Yi took out 15 pieces of third-grade jingshi. This is the fee for 3 days. I hope to have a good partnership with Mr. Shang. The other was generous in payment, and Shang Wei-ming's mood became even better. He took the jingshi and said humbly, to serve you is this one's honor. Seeing the two finish their conversation, Sua Mo smiled and opened up, this is the first time we have come to Cloud Sea Jie. We are unfamiliar with this place. Can Mr. Shang give us an introduction? No problem. Shang Wei-ming discreetly put the jingshi into his pocket and continued. Cloud Sea Jie is remote. Even though it was discovered early in recorded history, there haven't been many Xiuzhi here. You must have seen the many abandoned cloud islands along the way. Yes, what happened? Sua Mo hurriedly said. The reason there are not many Xiuzhi in Cloud Sea Jie is because we are currently overrun with Yao beasts. Those cloud islands were occupied before, but as there are too many Yao beasts in Cloud Sea Jie, those who are weak were eaten by the Yao beasts. Why don't you hunt and kill the Yao beasts? Sua Mo asked curiously. Every part of a Yao beast is treasure. Shang Wei-ming showed a grimace. It's the fault of this cloud sea. This cloud sea is endless and extremely deep. No one knows how deep it is down there. These Yao beasts mostly live inside the cloud sea with it as a barrier. This cloud sea is also very strange, it can almost completely block off Ling energy. For many years, an unknown amount of people used to dive into the cloud sea to explore it, but though many went, only a few come back. Of those that came back, they usually have no gains. Gradually, few wanted or dared to go down anymore. Then isn't it very dangerous above the cloud sea? Sua Mo was frightened. Yes. The cloud sea is vast and filled with danger. Our Jie's cloud islands can be counted in tens of thousands, but there are not many that are truly suited for Xiuzhi to inhabit. Our Dongxing Cloud Sea is the biggest cloud sea. Other than this, Chi Luo Continent and Huju Island are among the relatively large cloud islands. Please do not randomly fly among the cloud sea, it is very dangerous. There are transportation formations that go between the cloud islands. It is much safer to go through transportation formations. Between the cloud islands that do not have transportation formations, there are shipping routes that have defended cloud islands among the way. That is also a safer option. Finishing, he took out a jade scroll. This has all the transportation formations and shipping routes of Cloud Sea Jia. It isn't worth much, but a token of this one to give to boss. Shang Wei Ming's action clearly showed his intentions of forming a relationship. Suemo naturally understood. He smiled and took the jade scroll. Many thanks, Brother Shang. He took out a third-grade flying sword. A little token of our own, nothing major. Brother Shang, please accept it. Shang Wei Ming took the flying sword. Taking it in hand, he channeled Ling power through it. The smile on his face increased as he gave his thanks. Intermediate third-grade water element flying sword, this could be sold for a pretty good price. However, he did not plan on selling it. His son was not far from entering Mingmai and this flying sword was perfect for him. If it had just been a guess before, now he was almost certain this boss Suo was a big boss. Using a third-grade flying sword as the first move, this was the first time he had encountered such a thing. He couldn't help but rejoice how wise his decision had been. It was really profitable this time. Suemo looked around. Are there any Yao beasts where we are now? Shang Wei Ming hurried to say, Boss, don't worry. Our Dongxing Cloud Island has a large formation. Yao beasts will not come here. See how there are many cloud islands in this area, they are all protected by the large formation, and we do not need to worry about our safety. If boss wants to have a long stay, you may want to buy one and turn it into a private yard. They conversed as they slowly flew towards the large island, the black turtle following closely behind them. Oh, these cloud islands can be bought. Where can one buy them? What are the prices? Suemo was instantly interested. The black turtle was spacious on the inside, but after staying in for a long time, they had all, naturally, become restless. Searching for water cloud embryo would not be a quick matter. This place was relatively safe, and it was good to have a place to put their feet down. Shang Wei Ming just mentioned this in passing. He hadn't thought that Suemo would really be interested. He instantly became alert. According to the rules of the island, if he really could make this deal, he could receive a significant commission. Shang Wei Ming seemed to see countless Jingshi beckoning him. Good fortune had come so suddenly, that you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.